Good morning, everybody. I'm calling to order the regular meeting of the Board of Directors, May 19th, 2023, 9 a.m. Is there any just cause notifications and emergency circumstances requests that we are aware of?
No.
All right, thank you. Roll call, please.
Chair Campbell,
Here.
Vice Chair Shirley. Here. Dr. Laska,
Here.
Dr. Delgado,
Here.
Dr. Blackwolder,
Here.
Dr. Askey. Here. Dr. Peak,
Here.
Dr. Barber, Dr. Polito. Here. We have a quorum.
Great, thank you, Ida. If you would please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. So we will open it up to public communications. I know we have some special people today wishing to speak, but before we get to them, is there any general public communications anyone wishing to address the board on matters not appearing on the agenda? Make do so now. Please limit comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. The public may comment on any other matter listed on the agenda at the time the matter is being considered by the board. For information about submitting public comments in writing in advance of the meeting, please see meeting information section of this agenda. If there's anyone online who wishes to address the board, please raise your hand. And we'll get down to our clerk. And if there's no one online, great. And if there's anyone who would like to make general public comment, please approach the podium if they're here. Other than that, seeing no one, I'd like to welcome a special guest from the Monterey Bay Charter School. They've actually been doing a lot of work, and it's really exciting that they're here. They've worked together with food waste and compost in education, and they're obviously work for us and the whole community. It's great. So I'd like to welcome Jackie Sullivan, Laura Chester, Mahalo Wild, and Wujong Kim. So if you would please approach the podium if you'd like to say a few words.
Okay. So my name is Jackie Sullivan, and I'm the student council president at Monterey Bay Charter School. And working with ReGen was really amazing because when they were talking to us about composting and recycling and what a big issue food waste is, they were really engaging. And during the assembly, all the students were so excited about jumping into this project, and everyone was really motivated, and it really opened everyone's eyes to what a big problem this is. It felt really fitting working with ReGen because I've been at the Monterey Charter School for 7 years, so half my life because I'm 14 years old. And I've just seen so many efforts being made by Monterey Bay Charter School to be more environmentally responsible and make sure we are like upholding our, like what we say, like we're an ocean guardian school, and making sure that we protect our planet and things like that. So it just felt very right, like working with ReGen. And I'm really excited that we had this opportunity to be like one of the first schools to work with making sure we're responsible with our food waste and making sure we're composting. And I'm just very lucky and grateful that we got to work with them. And I hope that our relationship with ReGen continues as we work out any kinks that we have in the system, and we just improve our school. And yeah, thank you guys for having us. This is really exciting for us because student council's never been on a field trip, so this is our first student council field trip. And yeah, thank you guys very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Hi, my name is Mahela, and I'm 13 years old. I am the student council vice president, and I think that working with ReGen is really important because most people, when they eat food, will just throw it away. They won't try and do anything with it after they finished. So I think that composting is really important because it creates like way less food waste. And working with ReGen has just opened my eyes to how much food is like actually wasted. And um I really think that working with ReGen is really important for the school, especially being like one of the first schools to try to do composting. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Chester. I'm 13. I'm in 7th grade at Monterey Bay Charter School. I serve as the Ocean Guardian representative for Student Council. And I've always had like a really deep love and connection to the ocean. And so working with ReGen and trying to get the school to be a better place with composting and with and environmentally speaking is really important to me. And it's definitely like helped me see all the possibilities for our school, for my generation and for future generations. And even though it sometimes there might be little speed bumps or and even though it's a work in progress, ReGen has really helped us work out all those things. And so I think it's really important that our friendship with ReGen will continue, and I hope we can continue doing the best that we can for our school. Thank you.
My name is Ujin and I am Student Council Treasurer at Monterey Bay Charter School. Working with ReGen was great help for our school. It really helped us become a better Ocean Guardian school and our efforts to be a zero waste school. Separating the trash showed us how big of a problem it is and the importance of properly separating trash. We hope to continue working with ReGen so we can stay being a great Ocean Guardian school.
In a moment, I'll come down and I look forward to giving you a certificate of appreciation, but I just want to say that we do all appreciate this very much. I mean, there's so many people here and out there who devoted much of their lives to doing what you just helped us do. And I think you know, we devote time to this as well, and it thrills us that you're helping us and you're conscious of something that we feel is very important. So any other board member would like to say something from the class?
I'd like to thank you very much for recognizing at your young age how important it is to care for the earth, care for the ocean, and do the right thing. It's so important. And I hope you will go home and teach your parents this the correct way, because that's the way, is to educate the young and have the young go home and educate their parents about the need to do this, because it's very different for older people to understand why we're doing this. So I really applaud your work and keep it up. This is great.
Thank you.
Vice Chair.
I just want to thank you for coming to talk to us. You all did a great job. I'm so happy you get a field trip out of this. You all give me hope.
Yeah.
So thank you. I could come to tears thinking about the work you do and the work you're going to do as you move forward. So thank you.
I hope that Kim cried for me. But at 14, I wasn't anywhere close to where you are. You represented yourself so well just to show up here, but also all that you did at your school and the way that you spoke so articulately today. Thank you. You guys are amazing.
And I'll make a couple comments as well. It's especially amazing to see these four students who I've watched grow up for many, many years since Laura was born, and Michaela for many, many years. I'm so proud of you for doing this brave thing to stand up and speak and to share your experience. I'm also so proud of you for being the voice that's going to keep talking about these issues, because we know that change doesn't happen because we sit here and make policy decisions. Change happens because the community and people in the community decide that this is the right thing to do. So you are that voice and you are showing what's possible. I also just want to take a quick moment. You know, the landfill here is like, people don't really think about like what happened here to their trash when you put it in a garbage can, but it comes here. And there's a whole bunch of different careers that happen here to manage waste management. We have, you know, our clerk of the board who runs all of the administrative projects here at the ReGen. We have engineers who are designing where to put the next landfill and how to compact garbage. We have attorneys who represent, make sure that we're following all of the legal requirements that happen. There's communication professionals who are helping to let the public know what needs to happen. There's so many different careers that you can pursue that allow you to make a living while also supporting these big complex challenges that exist. Like, what do we do with garbage? Like, it's a big challenge that as a community we have to grapple with. And I just want, I'm so grateful that you're here today. I think your feedback was moving. It reminds us why we're here and why we commit our time to be here. But I also want to make sure that you're thinking about all of the different ways that as you go through school and continue on with your education, you keep in mind that there are really incredible jobs working in waste management. And so think about how you might continue learning more about all of the different variety of jobs that are helpful. So thank you for being here. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
And then you're gonna, okay.
Yes, I'd like to, if you would, all of you would join me in front of the podium, that would be great.
Sorry.
I'd like to, on behalf of the board, I'd like to give you guys this commitment to service and appreciation for implementing food scrap composting. The certificate is awarded to Monterey Bay Charter School. Loyal and committed students form the basis of every successful recycling and composting program. This award is to recognize and honor those individuals who have worked to place zero goals within reach. As we celebrate your accomplishment, we extend our congratulations and sincere thanks for your contributions and commitment to sustainability. We appreciate the different ways you are helping reduce our impact on Earth. So, yes, so this is for you. Yeah. And I know there's some others who want to be here. Will you join us, Wendy?
Have our whole board come down. This is a big deal for Monterey Charter School. Like, if you can get a photo done.
Yes.
Or do you want to have the students come up there with
Sure.
the?
Yes.
All right.
photo, and then we can.
Oh, that's even better.
We might have a wire.
Pleasure to stand down here and all this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Turn around to the side.
All right, well, there's tables there.
Stand right here.
Yeah.
Is that gonna work?
Yeah. Of course, it's our general manager.
Yeah. And then you guys will both get right in front. Okay.
What? This is special, yeah, very special.
Great.
Sorry.
You're all good. Okay.
Hold the certificate up just a teeny bit, fold the
Yeah.
back part over a little bit if you can.
Don't cover your
So it's
face,
not
though.
blocking your face, yeah, there you go. That looks great.
All right. Perfect. 1, 2, 3. Great photo. Thank you.
Yeah.
21. No.
Go ahead.
Really quick. Just want to give a big shout out for our education team. You guys are making a big difference. Thank you.
What a great way to start a meeting off. Thank you for indulging us, and if there's no more public comment, I will close public comment. And just want to let you know there's gonna rearrange a little bit on the agenda here under recognitions and presentations. We're gonna move item 13 up before 11. Just a heads up. All right, so we're entering the consent portion of the agenda. These matters include routine financial and administrative actions which are usually approved by a single majority vote. Individual items may be removed from the consent for discussion and actions. One, approve minutes of April 21, 2023 regular board meeting. Two, approve report of disbursements, board and employee reimbursements for April 2023. Three, receive April 5th, 2023 personnel committee minutes. 4, receive May 3rd, 2023 finance committee draft minutes. 5, receive May 3rd, 2023 personnel committee draft minutes. 6, approve new limited lease of land for farming operation with Neponset Ag of Monterey County, California. 7, approve the purchase of 2 new Reaver L55X wheel loaders with 8CY routine roll-out buckets from Veggie of Placentia, California for $780,000 plus the 7.75 sales tax amount. 8, approve agreement with Geologic Associates of Death Valley, California for construction quality assurance. QA, monitoring the Monterey landfill liner construction. The cost for the required services will be billed on a time and materials basis with prevailing wages in the amount of $385,000, includes a 15% contingency. Funds have been included in the capital outlay portion of the budget for fiscal year 2022-2023 and are included in the preliminary budget for fiscal year 2023-2024 for this work. 9, approve fiscal year 2023-24 amendments to exhibits A and B of the MOU between ReGen Monterey and its member jurisdictions regarding compliance with California Senate Bill 1303. And 10, adopt resolution 2023-05 recognizing Public Works Week of May 21st through 27th, 2023. Is there any member of the board who would like to pull any item for further discussion?
I have a brief comment on number 10, the Public Works Week.
Okay, just 1 second. And we will be doing that as a presentation.
Mr. Chair, relative to the your approval of the consent agenda, one of the items is the minutes from the last meeting, and I just wanted to point out a brief correction. In connection with item having to do with the teleconferencing policy, Director Askew had suggested some changes, and the record says it should be made in section C, and section C is the public teleconferencing. It should actually be changed to section B, which relates to the teleconferencing under the prior and a long time existing Brown Act provision. So just for that, we make the record to show that change.
Okay.
And that specific change then will be added to the teleconferencing policy, and it will then be prepared, ready to be posted on the website.
Okay, great. Thanks for catching that. All right, is there any member of the public who wishes to pull any item from the consent agenda or would like to comment generally on the consent agenda? Please approach the podium if you're here or make yourself known online. Did you see anyone?
I see them.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're closing for comment on the consent. If we could have a motion. I'll move approval. Thank you. Here we go. and seconded by Wendy. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, moving on to recognition of presentations. So like I said, we're switched us up. So presentation of 2023 Artist in Resident, Exhibit A, Microcosm of Hope, by Jesse Villarreal.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, we'd like to present Jesse Villarreal and Eric Palmer for presenting a presentation around our artist in residence. He has completed his forte of artwork. We had an opportunity yesterday as a team to go out and show support for Jesse Villarreal, and the product of his work was a very good example. I'm very thankful to Jesse for allowing us a view out of his lenses. He did capture a lot of the art that represented our frontline folks, and what a coincidence. We've had a year of really focusing on our frontline folks and showing the importance of how they're respected, the hard work that they do. And the art kind of came right behind that, showing all the examples of our frontline workforce. And it's the first time we've had an artist. I believe we talked about it yesterday. We've had 8 artists in total, Jesse being number 8. And this is the first time we've seen the representation of the art in our people. And I'm pretty excited to see the presentation today. Jesse, thank you for your work. It was also noted by his professor that Jesse had a work ethic that was unsurpassed. He delivered a lot of quality materials, a lot of pieces of art, and he took the construction criticism midway through his program and his residence to change course and still better give us a large venue of art that we're pretty excited to share with you today. So thank you, Jesse, for your efforts. Thank you to CSUMB and your professor, and the partnership that we have ReGen with BDC. Freya was a nice inspiration as well from BDC. She's the manager there, and she gave Jesse a lot of time and attention. So did Eric and the communications team. So Jesse, thank you for your work, and a huge round of applause for Jesse at this time. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, Chair Campbell and Board. My name is Eric Palmer, the Public Education Outreach Coordinator for ReGen Monterey. And it's honestly a great privilege to help coordinate this program and introduce you to our 2023 fellow, Jesse Villarreal. As Felipe said, this is the 8th year of the program, and it's a partnership between ReGen, Last Chance, and CSUMB. And at the beginning of the year, the Visual and Public Arts Department chooses a student for the special fellowship, and they salvage materials at Last Chance and the materials recovery facility and upcycle them into art. And the program mission is to educate and inspire the public of the importance of repurposing, recycling, and reusing discarded materials. And to become an artist in residence here is very competitive, actually. And once you see Jesse's portfolio, you'll see it's no surprise why he was chosen. Let's see. We were immediately impressed by his portfolio coming into the program. He's a multidisciplinary artist, and part of the surprise of the program is we don't give them any direction. They come here and get inspired by the materials they find. Jesse is ambitious, and he told us he wanted to incorporate all of his disciplines, including the written word. His art is inspired by people, environment, and stories that surround us, especially stories of people who overcome great obstacles. And here are some examples of his work, previous work in that regard. And on top here are Tocayos and El Trabajador, paintings of his grandfather at work. He lives on his ranch with his grandfather in Soledad. On the bottom right's a 12-foot roadside mural called La Primera, which depicts the first female mayor of Soledad. And then a fantastic mural of, at CSUMB, which depicts various scenes in Monterey County. And based on these pieces, we were really excited to see what he brought to the fellowship. It was a real pleasure working with Jesse and watching his creative process. He's very humble, respectful, and thoughtful. As Professor said, he was chosen partly because of his work ethic, and I can really corroborate this statement. He didn't take this program for granted. He wanted to spend a lot of time in the field at our landfill and materials recovery facility. He spent more time observing than salvaging, which what I observed, and I thought he was just taking in the unusual experience of being here. But we soon learned that he was a documentarian. He called his exhibit a microcosm of hope. And previous artists and residents have created abstract art, typically sculptures with discarded materials, but Jesse came up with something truly unique and special. Using discarded materials as a canvas, he took a documentarian approach to the fellowship and depicted scenes from our operations, including workers and the natural beauty that surrounds our site. Frontline workers aren't typically the subjects of art, nor are landfills or industrial plants, but he found and captured the moments of beauty that you can find here and generously honored our hardest working staff. We had a well-attended reception yesterday, and it was really special to see dozens of staff there to show support and see the smiles on their faces as they saw their friends and colleagues, offices and work sites depicted in art. Yesterday and this particular fellowship has really been one of the most moving experiences in my career. I'd really like to thank the board for your continued support of this program. This small investment allows a student artist the opportunity to create a body of work and a real professional art installation for their portfolio. And it also supports our mission to promote zero waste in our community. The program also connects with our longstanding partnerships with local schools and school education. Monterey Bay Charter School is an example of this education package to schools. We advise about proper disposal and do presentations across the district. Yeah, lastly, I'd just like to thank Brea Reed, who's the manager at Last Chance. She allows the artists to work at the store, and she's been so accommodating and supportive, constructing the studio out of an old trailer truck with help of our operations staff. And thank you to Dio Mendoza, who coordinates the program on CSUMB side and acts as a mentor, and he's been with the program since the beginning. Thanks to Felipe, Jay, Zoe, Kristen, and the countless people on staff who support the program and allow our artists to enter their workspace and provide safety and an education. And as a former art student at CSUMB myself, I'm just really filled with great pride for Jesse and this program. So he's gonna show some of his work.
All right. Eric, do you want to help me out?
Yeah.
All right, first of all, I just want to say thank you guys for allowing me this opportunity to come here and create work. I really learned a lot about myself, my practice, and really about just what goes on here at ReGen, which is a very enlightening experience. And right now, I'll take you through some of the work that we've gone through, but I want to talk about my experience, so you can just shuffle through. So I came here initially with a blank slate. I didn't really know what to expect, but as I was creating, inspiration kind of found me. So I was just creating scenes from the landscape and the workers here. And as I was creating, I was hearing the staff just talk about their jobs and seeing the workers put in the work. And I was really inspired by what it was they were doing and what they were talking about and how honored they were to have this role in being stewards of the environment and managing the waste. And I know, like, before I came here to this artist in residence, I was out in the world, and I really felt like my efforts to reduce and recycle were futile, just because I felt like I was an individual and what difference can I make out in the world? But after coming here to ReGen and seeing all the work that takes place, I now understand that if I do my part and if you do your part, if we all do our part as individuals and in a community, then all the workers here at ReGen will take on the harder tasks, the harder jobs of recycling and managing all that excess waste. And I think that's the most important thing that I'm taking from this experience that I will share with the public from now on. And that's really all I have to say about that. Thank you guys.
So I talk a little bit about your materials used and what you depicted here.
So I was actually inspired to recreate art on tiles because I found a tile piece that was salvaged in the tip floor. And there's a bunch of recycled tile pieces at Last Chance. So I would go into the MRF facilities in the landfill, and I would take videos and record and document. And I would go back into my studio and sift through what images kind of moved me and what images I thought were really strong. And so I recreated them onto the tiles. And these birds here right there were also cohabiting the trailer with me. So they had 3 little fledglings in there if you guys want to come visit. But I think that's also an important thing to note, that Here we're managing trash and waste, but it's also to preserve the environment for birds, just like the falcons and the birds that were cohabiting the trailer with me. So, yeah.
I just want to show us a special moment. Leo came by yesterday. We were really encouraging him to come, and he came toward the end of it, and it was really special to see a portrait of his falcon. You could tell he was really moved by it. Jesse got to hold it too.
That was a fun experience.
And he was outside. So he did sketches too. It's the view from the studio.
And I don't know if you captured the written piece, but I did a journal entry as a way to kind of expand my art portfolio. So if you guys do get a chance, I would love for you guys to go down to Last Chance and check it out. Most of the pieces have sold already, so before the 27th, if you guys don't get a chance, they will all be gone.
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say this would make a great traveling exhibit to all the cities on the peninsula, because every city has a little place somewhere where they display art. This would be very educational and explain much more to people what happens when they put that stuff in those 3 different colored cans.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry that will all be sold so soon, but it would perhaps you could document this as is and figure out a way to share that. Because it really does tell a story that we don't think about.
Just do more, Jesse.
I am thinking about compiling it into maybe a small publication, so that will be in the future works, and I'll be definitely in contact with Eric about that.
Great. We'll be posting on our social media too, to share it with everybody.
Sure, one comment real quick. Eric, if you wouldn't mind going back to the one of the earth, I think that was, Jesse's favorite picture.
Yeah.
Of them all. I thought it was a great representation.
Yes.
You know, and when Jesse shared this piece with us yesterday, he says, this is the region helping save the earth, and I thought it was a great depiction because the earth is essentially on fire, and our team is here to put out some of those fires and encourage other people, so I thought it was fantastic. His display will be up through Friday of next week. I encourage if you got the time to go down today. I would have really loved to hear Jesse give the narrative around his piece, his poem that he wrote. I thought it was an excellent representation of what he observed from the staff and the sharing, and he became part of our team along the way. People showed up to the exhibit and said, I've seen him around, I've seen him over here. I was on tour, then I would see him have this absorbing. So again, I think you did an excellent job, and thank you for lending your lenses up as to you see what we represent here with ReGen. So thank you again, Jesse, for all your efforts.
Thank you.
One more observation. I have a daughter who is an artist, and she has done different performance art and art regarding trash and so on in New York. And I think we underappreciate actually how much artists can do to lead us in the right direction. And art through music, art through painting, posters. Look at Banksy. I mean, art leads us in good places. So thank you so much for applying your talent to educate everyone about ReGen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Jesse, thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's a great segue after the students from Monterey Bay Charter School. And I kind of think what you're gonna say about this, but I sometimes we're surprised. So can you talk a little bit about this piece and what you think about it and how you came to put the different pieces of it together?
Yeah, so I took I think that was a picture of fire training, and I took it from the website, and it really just, it's a simple metaphor that I came up with because what you guys are doing here at ReGen is really saving the planet. And I also learned yesterday that apparently there's a lot of battery fires that occur, not just in the MRF, but also on the landfill, and it's dangerous. And I think that those things shouldn't be happening, but regardless, ReGen is here to put out those fires and to fight back against that. excess waste and that wastefulness. So I think it's just ReGen saves the planet, and that's the title of it.
Great. Thank you.
No problem.
Really, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're super impressed, and I hope we all can get down there, and like, I'm planning to go down right after this meeting, so. Thank you very much, Jesse.
Thank you.
That was wonderful, and good job. I'm glad we have this program, and hope we continue it for many years to come. All right, so moving on to item 11, presentation resolution 2023-05, recognizing public first week.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, we'll have David Ramirez, our engineering manager, presenting.
Good morning.
DPW.
Morning, Chair Campbell, members of the board. I mean, geez, tough act to follow. I'm gonna give it my best shot. So I wanted to thank everybody for on the board for recognizing the public works. And I think the two presentations before me kind of represented what the effort of Public Works Week is. Public Works, American Public Works Association represents all the different pieces of infrastructure that exist to make our civil lives better, right? Our public lives better, the water system, the sewer systems, the traffic and road divisions of your individual cities, the waste management divisions. And essentially what we're trying to do with this Public Works Week is bring awareness to everybody about these different pieces of infrastructure. But my goodness, thank goodness for artists who do that on a daily basis and make the invisible visible. And that's really, really powerful stuff, much more powerful than what I could do up here on the podium or what APWA can do. So it's really heartwarming to see those images and to know that those images are going to live on and those materials are going to live on and convey the message of what we do here. Because as we all know, a lot of us didn't know this place existed before we came here on business or because we took a tour. And so that's the point of the Public Works Week, is to make the infrastructure we have visible. And just one comment on the middle schoolers. If I think back to what I was doing in middle school, I think it was breakdancing was like I was trying to learn how to pop. We called it pop. I don't know if it's still called popping, but that's what I was doing. So yeah, exactly. So really looking for, and now I'm an engineer. Who would have thought? Yeah. So I really want to thank everybody for coming and thank you for recognizing Public Works Week.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, David. I'm coming from the board.
You're gonna add a little dance.
Yeah, I wanted to
I can.
I appreciate Public Works, month or week, with two examples. Last Saturday, there was a grand opening of a BMX bike pump track where you don't pedal much, you just use your momentum, move up and down. That's what they call it, pump track. Anyway, it was $1 million project. It was done by Public Works. And we think of Public Works as roads and buildings, et cetera. But there's a pump track, and it's completely sustainable because sustainability includes our mental and physical health, right? And so if you have a neighborhood park with a pump track, there's going to be a lot of non-motorized, healthy activity going on there, and a lot of happiness and joy. And it's all by Public Works. And then I think a couple weeks from now, there's going to be a kickoff of a $44 million engine parkway road widening project. And that's what we normally think of Public Works. So, just big and little, kind of like David summarized, we have a lot to thank for Public Works projects done by the Public Works employees. Just want to bring up those two examples.
Great points.
Oh, and I guess I brought up the engine because there'll be a lot of 2-year-long disruption, getting between Salinas and Monterey. So it's kind of a timely time. So that that Engine Parkway major construction is going to begin very soon.
Okay, great. Thank you, Bruce. Anyone else? All right. Thank you for the presentation, David. And yes, I agree that where would we be without Public Works? Yeah, really Yes, the ratepayers, taxpayers, everybody, that is what we get. That is a wealth and asset. It's what we get, that good solid work and foundation. And without that, we'd be much poorer off. Great points. All right, we're moving on to item 12, presentation of the 2023 SB 1383 contamination monitoring results by Blue Strike Environmental.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, we have Zoe Schultz, our Communication Director.
Thank
and
you.
Blue Strike Environmental here to do a presentation on some of our observations.
Thank you, Felipe. Good morning, Chair, members of the board. I'm happy to come today to share some of the results of all of our efforts with food scrap composting and SB 1383 implementation along with Blue Strike Environmental. So monitoring is a part of the regulations that are imposed upon the jurisdictions through SB 1383. And we take part in that monitoring together through the shared costs MOU that you just approved on your consent agenda this morning. Those shared costs, some of those shared costs go into these monitoring results. So you'll get to see some of the outcome of the activities that the jurisdictions are paying for. We use those funds to hire Blue Strike Environmental for these monitoring results. And we have Katie James here with us today to help present the results and walk us through. These results will provide some opportunities for us, the Technical Advisory Committee specifically, the haulers, all of the jurisdictions in ReGen to further our education and outreach, find what areas we need to focus on in the future. And I do want to point out though, these results and the way that we approached this study was really in service of the regulations and how CalRecycle asks us to monitor, asks us as the jurisdictions, really your jurisdictions to monitor. So the monitoring is in depth in that every container, whether it be trash, recycle, or organics, is flipped on in a particular household that is chosen. But there are few routes that are selected in each jurisdiction and 25 homes per route that are assessed. So while these results give us a glimpse, it's not necessarily statistically significant information as it would be when you hear about our recycling characterization study, for example, that pulls very specific loads and weighs all of the materials and categorizes all of that. So this is kind of a higher level viewpoint, but it still gives us a lot of information as to what's happening in the community. So with that, I'll hand it over to Katie James and she'll walk us through.
Thank you, Zoe, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Katie James. I'm a sustainability events manager, among other things, at Blue Strike Environmental. I would like to thank the board for the opportunity to present today. I would also like to acknowledge Brian McMinn for leading the MRE subcommittee, as well as Tom Parola with Monterey City Disposal for helping us to guide our development of the methodology that we used for contamination monitoring. As you are all aware, all of the jurisdictions are required to conduct contamination monitoring for all of their waste streams per the SB 1383 requirements. So in March of this year, Blue Strike conducted that contamination monitoring on behalf of the jurisdictions in the Monterey City Disposal and Green Waste Service areas. As Zoe is mentioning, this is all per CalRecycle's requirements, and the specific requirements around contamination monitoring are still dynamic. So we are continuing to improve and update our methodology with the tax and the haulers. So it's important to note that what we are seeing today in these results are a snapshot in time based on our methodology. And in the future, we will continue to update this methodology to reflect the dynamic nature of our waste management systems. So with that being said, I would like to get into some of the results we found.
We can use the arrow key too. I think the arrow right there, the keyboard. Or down, down. There you go.
So in total, we conducted 1,385 flips. And to clarify what a flip is, it's monitoring one bin for one waste stream. So for example, if we went to a residential address and they had an organics bin, a recycling bin, and a trash bin, and we monitored all three, that would count as 3 flips. So for residential addresses, we conducted a total of 815 flips. And for commercial addresses, we conducted a total of 570 flips. So the total amount of flips with any level of contamination for all of the jurisdictions was 233. This means that overall there was a 16.82% contamination rate, with a 15.09% contamination rate for residential addresses and a 19.3% contamination rate for commercial addresses.
Can I ask a question? When you say flip, you mean you just flip and look?
Yeah, so the methodology is we open the bin, look inside, we don't rummage around, we just go based off of what we can see from looking in visually. Yeah. So for the garbage waste stream, some of the common contaminants we found was a pretty even split between recyclables and organics. There are a bit more recyclables in the commercial stream than the residential stream. And this could be due to some confusion around what may be recyclable and what's not. There was also one count of hazardous material in the commercial stream. I believe that was either batteries or some sort of e-waste. And the residential stream was pretty similar, a pretty even split between recyclables and organics. For the recycling waste stream, we saw there were a good amount of plastic bags and garbage as the contaminants, especially in the commercial stream. It seems a lot of addresses are still bagging up their recyclables. So there may need to be some more education around that. And then again, perhaps some confusion about what types of plastics are recyclable that contributed to the garbage in the waste stream and a small amount of organics. The residential stream is pretty similar, but a bit more garbage than plastic bags there. For the organics waste stream, we saw the main contaminant for commercial addresses was garbage. So oftentimes there were addresses who maybe weren't using their food waste or organics bins themselves, and maybe passerbys were throwing trash in those bins. There were also some plastic bags, people bagging up their compostables, and a little bit of recyclables as well. For residential addresses, we saw compostable bags as contaminants, as well as some garbage, recyclables, and plastic bags. It's important to keep in mind that the overall contamination rate for residential yard waste bins especially was very low, so those numbers are all quite low. I'd like to get into some results by jurisdiction now. Here you see a chart of all of the contaminated flips, and this is broken out by all jurisdictions and even further by residential and commercial addresses, as well as by waste stream and level of contamination. So the levels of contamination we were monitoring were low, medium, and high. Low being any contamination less than 10%. Medium was considered contamination between 10 and 50%, and high contamination was anything more than 50% contaminated. It's important to note that, as Zoe mentioned, there were significant differences in sample size by jurisdiction. Monterey City had a significantly larger number of routes monitored, and so their overall sample size was larger, and so that may contribute to some of the differences we see in contamination levels here. But I'll get into what this looks like percentage-wise for each jurisdiction in the following slides.
Can I make a quick note for the county? The county is utilizing smart truck technology using the cameras on the trucks themselves. So that's why they're not featured in this presentation, and they did not participate towards the cost sharing in this particular activity.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So first we have Monterey City with an overall contamination level of 29.49%. And again, we have another chart that breaks this down by residential and commercial addresses, as well as waste stream and level of contamination. So for example, you can see out of all of the residential garbage flips that were conducted in Monterey City, for example, 2.15% of them had medium contamination. So almost 22% of all garbage flips in Monterey had any level of contamination, and 45% of recycling flips had any level of contamination, and 18.75% of organics flips had contamination. Next, we have Marina, which had an overall contamination level of 18.67%. 10% of garbage flips were contaminated in Marina. 27% of recycling flips had any level of contamination, and 18.75% of organics flips were contaminated. Next, we have Delray Oaks with a contamination level overall of 18.03%. 14.29% of garbage flips were contaminated, 33% of recycling flips, and 5.26% of organics flips. Next, we have Carmel by the Sea
Carmel had an overall contamination rate of 11.43%, with 4% contamination in garbage, almost 23% contamination in recycling, and almost 7% contamination in organics. And next we have Pebble Beach with an overall contamination level of 10.53%. And we actually did not visit any commercial addresses for Pebble Beach Community Services District. So all of this is for their residential addresses. There was an overall contamination in garbage of 10.53%. The recycling had 21% contamination, and there was actually 0 contamination for organics. Next, we have Pacific Grove with a contamination level of 8.64%. There was a 7% contamination level for garbage, 16% contamination for recycling, and 2% contamination for organics. Next, we have Seaside with an overall contamination level of 7.69%, with a 4% contamination level for garbage, 12.5% contamination in recycling, and 6.45% contamination in organics. And finally, we have Sand City with the lowest contamination level at 7.01%. 9.26% of garbage flips were contaminated in Sand City, 5.45% of recycling flips were contaminated, and 6.25% of organic flips were contaminated. So some observations and recommendations we have moving forward. We saw that there were very few organics carts out at residential addresses, and this is likely due to seasonality. We were sampling in March, so it was the rainy season, and we're assuming that not a lot of people were landscaping, so there might not have been a great need for the organics carts to be out. However, as I stated, we had a goal of flipping 25 carts per waste stream per route, and this made it difficult for us to reach that goal oftentimes. So it may be helpful to include more addresses in the future so we can reach that goal. There might also be education needed surrounding compostable bags and bagging recyclables. These were some of the most common contaminants that we found. And again, in the green waste service areas, many of the commercial addresses didn't have organic service accounts. This could be because they were waived, or there might need to be more education or technical assistance needed around that. And again, that did make it difficult for us to reach our goal of 25 flips for the organic stream. Some qualitative observations we found with the contaminants we saw for residential addresses. Most of the organics contamination we found in the garbage stream was due to a yard waste bin being completely full. So those who were using their yard waste frequently ran out of space and needed to put that extra somewhere. Recycling contamination, like I said, was often due to recyclables being bagged. So there might need to be education there, and residential yard waste bins in general tended to have very low contamination levels. So I'd like to thank you all again for the opportunity to present today, and I'd like to open up the floor to any questions or comments you may have.
Yes, you know, I've been kind of on a little rant that we don't have any educational labels on our cans in Carmel. And I've asked Green Waste about that, and their answer is that they're putting them out on multifamily, which we don't really have too many in Carmel. And that as they replace cans, they will put out the labels, which I said, I've had the same can for 10 years. I don't know when it would ever be replaced. So I think we're missing, this is a missing thing, that the haulers are not putting out the educational material on the can that says no plastic bags, that spells out what plastics are recyclable. Otherwise, we're getting the aspirational recycling that we've talked about. But anybody can make room for their kitchen waste. I have a full can every week. I pull up the stuff, I bury my kitchen waste, and then I put it on top. And I bungee cord it on if it doesn't completely shut. But I think we're never going to get as far as we want to get until we force the haulers to put those labels on. And I'm certainly going to bring it up in our rates go up in Carmel, that should be part of the hauler's responsibility is to properly have the labels on the cans. And I hope all of you will look in your town and see if you have labels and call up your hauler to talk about when that's gonna happen, because people don't know, and it has changed here and there. And I said, you know, we have to tell them how to do it and show them how to do it. That's my comment. But thank you for doing the work you're doing. I appreciate it.
Chair, if I may I respond to Director Filito's comment? I think you're making a really great point that especially on the top of the carts, it's a fantastic place to educate. And you're actually thinking the same way that the legislators did when they wrote the bill, because proper labeling of carts is included in the SB 1383 regulations. There is, I believe, a timeline though associated with that to allow for cart turnover as Green Waste has responded to you. So it may be, I'd have to look up the regulations, it may be 2030 or as carts are replaced. So I do encourage that, you know, if this is something you feel passionate about, that you continue to reach out to Green Waste, but that is written in the regs and that will become a regular thing that all 3 streams will be required to have proper labeling on top of the cart.
Yeah, they sent them to me in the mail, so I could apply them myself.
Nice. Just real quick, how much longer, do we have as a franchise agreement with Green Waste?
Until 2030.
Until 2030, so they, okay, and they may have until 2030 to label it, so in other words, they may not ever label it.
Yeah, I'd have to check the dates on that particular requirement. It may be sooner than 2030. I know there is a requirement to properly color code the carts, using blue for recycling and green for all organics. You'll notice we have yellow, for example, in the commercial organics. Those will be required to be changed out. And labeling may be along that same timeline, but I'd have to again check the regs to make sure that that's the case.
Have you reviewed the language or what they're gonna put on top? Because there's a whole lot of information. And to try to condense all that information for a sticker that goes on top. And also one that people can understand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean,
We do that as a part of our functions in the technical advisory committee. So all of the staff members of the jurisdictions and all the haulers have the opportunity to review those materials before they're
so
put out.
Green Waste would get direction from TAC.
Generally, yeah, generally Green Waste provides a draft, or the hauler would provide a draft, and then comments would come back from both staff and ReGen as to any edits that need to be made. And we'll be considering things like, you know, imagery versus icons, how to make things in multiple languages and easy to understand, or pictorial versus written, or both. I mean, there's a lot to go into what a label would entail. So we would all provide feedback to that process.
Bruce?
Yeah, some questions. Thank you, Katie. It's a lot of work. Seems easy, but I know it's gotta be a ton of work. So I can understand that you don't do a dive, you just do a flip because safety and the muck factor and time and effort and all that. But if you were to have done a dig, a dive, instead of just a flip and look, do you guess from your experience that you would have gotten a much higher contamination rate? Or do you think that the surface kind of hits it?
I think the main factor that would change contamination rates would be if we were actually opening bags to see what's in them. It's difficult to really tell how much contamination you have in your garbage if people are, you know, bagging up their organics and throwing it in the garbage, for example. So I don't know if diving in without opening bags would really change contamination levels that much. You get a pretty good idea from
Right.
looking
If you
at
open it
samples on
up,
the
you
top.
only see bags. You say not contaminated
For garbage stream.
for
yes.
garbage stream, right? For recycling, you're opposite. So it could only go up, and it might go up 2 or 3 times what the numbers we see here. So that would be important. Did you do multifamily or just single family?
We did multifamily. Those results are included in the commercial results because they have the same routes, the same types of dumpsters.
Do you think that's why commercial is higher? Was it because of commercial or was it because of multifamily? Or do you think they were somewhat the same?
I think it depends on the jurisdiction. I could certainly go back and look through our data and see if there's a big difference there, but observationally speaking, qualitatively, I didn't notice a big difference between commercial and multifamily.
All right, okay, well, thank you, and to Karen's point, someone stole my bin last week, 20 years. And, so I asked for another one, they gave me another one, and it had a beautiful sticker on top. I said, "Oh." And we collected like 600,000 too much from residents, so the city of Marina is trying to figure out how to give it back, and so we're giving it back in different ways. But instead of giving it back, probably hang on to 100 grand or whatever it takes and pay workers to put stickers on all bins on the collection day, you know, slap them on when they're already out in the street. We could do this without waiting until 2030. It's not a matter of money, because we all have sources of money for that kind of level of funding, put stickers on bins. So we're really just killing ourselves for 8 more years, having contamination that's in part due to people don't know. And the bins all say green waste, so we go through a lot of effort to teach people about green waste. And they see a bin that says green waste, I'm sure that's gotta have something to do with putting green waste in the garbage and green waste in the recycling, because it says green waste without a sticker. How are most people gonna know who are not really paying attention? They see green waste, it's like, okay, they're all green waste, who knows? But thank you, it was a great effort you did, really good to hear the result. I just don't know why Marina was so sucky and why Seaside did so well. Seaside's doing something right. They're a bigger city, 34,000 with 8%, and Marina's 22,000 with whatever, 18%.
After the meeting, I'll tell you how it's done.
Okay.
If you wouldn't mind, comment just on Bruce's, note, there is, remember the representation of the whole of the study is about 2% of your total population for, if we just counted all the municipalities together. We sampled under 2% of the total, so like Zoe mentioned earlier, when we do our composition studies here, it's a bigger pool of material that may give us a more straight line indicator. This one, again, could be just the stops that were selected. So there is some questions around the data, mainly because the pool is so small. As we get better and better, but this is very enlightening to hear that we want to still continue to be ahead. As we hear in the TAC committees, as we have the representatives that represent your cities speak on it, is we're way ahead. And how do we continue to be way ahead? Is we have leaders that are thinking, why wait? Let's do what we need to do to make that happen. So I have a lot of appreciation for both yours and Karen's comments on how can we expedite some of the education that is kind of readily available for us now. So thank you.
Bill?
Thank you, Ms. James. This is important. Obviously, we're asking the community to sort. And so the community needs to know how well they're doing. Simple as that. I have just one question, and maybe it's for Ms. Schultz. Would this monitoring effort eventually lead to any possible enforcement actions?
This particular one, no. Enforcement begins January 1st, 2024 for SB 1383 regulations, and that's something the Technical Advisory Committee is now looking at. Enforcement can take many different forms. It may be how many customers, whether it be commercial, multifamily, or residential, have green carts, green organic carts, and versus how many don't. Or it could be much more in depth as to how they are being utilized, whether that's being checked by the hauler and then reported to the city, or some other methodology. We've kind of yet to determine what that looks like at this point. But CalRecycle, our understanding of CalRecycle's regulations say that enforcement is going to target how many people have the infrastructure, meaning have the green carts at their residence.
What would be the enforcement action? Would it be to the individual customer? Would it be to the municipality? Would it be to the district?
The enforcement would actually be imposed by the municipality, and it's not able to be transferred, for example, to the hauler to enforce. So one way that could look, one possibility that it could look like is you'll receive customer cart tags from your hauler, for example, if you've not done something correctly a few different times, and you may receive a a notice that you're not going to be serviced next time if you continue to make these mistakes. At some point, the hauler could potentially contact the city representative and say, we've done these particular actions. We believe an enforcement is necessary at that point, and then the city staff would write a letter, for example, or make a telephone call and contact the resident or customer and put them on notice, and then maybe issue fines moving forward. So we're kind of looking at what that structure might look like. We don't know yet, but the enforcement has to be done by the jurisdiction to the customer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just to add a little bit to Zoe's question to Director Pete. I think there'll be many forms. I've seen forms of enforcement being a fine or a penalty for the contamination. I've seen even further more I guess more of a penalty is you have a certain amount of allotments of contamination, and then you lose that privilege, and you it'll take some opportunities to improve what you're doing in recycling before you get your privilege back. So there's many variations of what that looks like. One that we don't want to do is unmotivate people from the recycling aspect. So we'll be very cautious in the selection of what that penalty looks like. Right? So I think there's many variations, and we haven't got to the one that's going to fit us just quite yet.
And I would appreciate feedback from and any of you all as to what you would like to see as a part of that enforcement, you know, either through your city staff or directly. I can bring that to our technical advisory committee for consideration and development of a plan, and then of course that would come to you all for approval.
You know, one thing that occurs to me is that people don't realize that their individual responsibility is on the line here. Just like our artist in residence, that he didn't know that he could impact the world, just one person. But every single resident in our city is impacting this number. And if we want to get better, every single person has to do their part. So the educational material has to, I think, stress that individual responsibility to be doing the right thing and the why this is happening. The more we repeat that this is part of climate change, that this is part of keeping our communities safe and clean and the earth safe and clean, the better, because eventually that message has to get through and motivate people to do the right thing and not consider it a punishment that they have to do this.
Okay, thank you. Mike, I see.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I just wanted to go back to that point that the responsibilities for SB 1383 are on the jurisdictions. The responsibility for solid waste services on the jurisdiction. So if for instance, you wanted to change something on the carts, the reason you need to talk to your staff and talk to your jurisdiction, it's just a matter of money. The franchise hauler has said, okay, this is what you wanted me to do. I bought this many carts. Now, if we want to change carts and bring new carts in, and there's two options on this advertising. One is put stickers on, and there's a concern that would cause a huge litter issue. So what the industry is looking at is kind of presetting some of those things into the carts. It's just a question of paying for that if it's that important. Every jurisdiction is a little different. And I think it's important to remember that the authority is really with the jurisdictions. And as Zoe said, the enforcement cannot be done by the hauler. The law says it has to be done by the jurisdiction. And so the idea is there's some flexibility. And I just wanted to make another comment when we were talking about this lip flipping exercise in the technical advisory committee. It's really a very limited look at this point. We're just trying to find out more information so that the education program that we move forward with, we can kind of have a focus on where to go. And so as we get more and more data, it'll be interesting. I mean, the difference between this one is just if there was contamination in a cart, it got a number. That was it. There was no question if it was one bag or if it was half full, it was going to show up as one. Whereas the contamination studies that the landfill does is more weight-based, and you get a better idea of the quantity that way. This is more of a qualitative thing. So this is a continuing process. We have a consultant who does a lot of work in the state, And when we showed him these numbers, he said, we're on the low end for the people that are doing the lid flippers. So we're just going to continue to try and improve the system. And I think it's important to remember, though, every jurisdiction, the law allows a little flexibility. What we're trying to do at the technical group is see if there's areas where we can work together.
Thank you, Mike. Just real quick, so technically Mike is in this moment a member of the public, and since they allow him to speak, I want to be sure that if there's any comments from the public or questions, now would be the time to approach and ask any questions, and we would just make a list of the questions, see if we can answer it after the public comment. So if there's any member of the public that would like to comment on this item, please do so.
I'd like to say that I'm hearing what you're coming up with ideas for. I'm Todd Wild, by the way. I'm Mahala's dad and brought the kids here today. For what was it? What you're saying about what to do to people that aren't aren't recycling correctly. I think education. I think people all want to do the right thing. That's the main thing that I'm hearing, and I think they all just need education on how to do it. And so instead of reprimanding them in some way and punishing them, I think educating them is probably the best way you can get people to do the right thing and recycle correctly. So I would say.
Great. Thank you, Todd. Anyone else? All right, we'll close public comment. Wendy, did you?
Just a question. So I know we have the district waste stream assessment. The challenge is that waste stream assessment, once it shows up here, we're not assessing it by city. So this is our only way to assess by city. Remind me what gets covered.
Yeah, why don't you can answer, David?
I can answer. So the district in the past has performed a couple of waste characterization studies on the single stream recyclables only.
Single stream recyclables only.
Correct.
Okay.
So the district has not taken it. I think the last waste characterization was done in 2013, 2014, and that was done only on the commercial routes. So yeah, the district would have to decide to do another specific waste characterization study or a single stream recyclable study or organic study.
And is
if
the
you wanted to do that.
recyclable study that was done, I think we got a presentation on last year.
Yeah, it was done in
Does that segment by
2021.
city? Do we
It does
assess
segment by city. Yeah, so
Okay.
there, in that study, it's kind of apples and oranges here. So on that study, we will take 250-pound sample or 150-pound samples random samples out of the truck from a given jurisdiction, and then we will sort that, and then we'll take about, depending on the size of the jurisdiction, we'll take more samples or less samples so that we get a statistically significant representation. And as Mike pointed out, that's much more of a detailed look compared to what was just presented now.
Yeah.
It was just a lid.
Thank you for that reminder.
Yeah.
I remember we saw something, but like how it compares. And then the only other comment I taught that the education piece, it's really important. And I just leaned over here. Lou said, "We're not supposed to put our recyclables in a bag." Oh, it's across the board. All of the constant learning and opportunities for constant improvement. So I'm gonna take that one home with me today.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Bear with me, please. I don't understand why representatives from the haulers are not required to attend these meetings. It would seem that would be something to think about in the future. I know at AMBEG, we have Caltrans, we have.
I believe they take part in the TAC meetings. They are there in technical advisory committee meetings, so they do.
So our comments can get back to them directly through that TAC meeting.
I see Mike nodding his head.
Yes, and certainly, and then if you know which member of your staff is on the TAC committee, you can ensure that you give them a call and see if they're on board with you as well. So
Okay, thank you.
I actually do have a question or clarification. I'm glad we clarified that, commercial also refers to multi-unit, to multi-unit residential. And I just, for clarification's sake on the percentages, I get a little concerned, so say you could only do, 20 lid flips on a route. If 10 of those lid flips showed contamination, you'd say 50% contamination rate.
Yes,
Just-
so the percentages don't reflect what level of contamination we found. I will say the majority of contamination we found was low contamination, so the less than 10% category.
Which
But-
is great, but then when you do designated low, medium, high, that is a little different. That's, you're actually visually, it's what you visually see. If you see, 10% or less of what you see on the top is contamination, then you say it's low.
Yes,
So it's not, so that is, I guess, more quantitative, a little more quantitative, and apparently Seaside's better at hiding that stuff when we.
You got your stuff on.
Okay, so even though it's kind of the sample is just really what you visually see, and then that's how you divide the percentages up into contaminations.
yes, so we basically, when we're flipping a lid, we kind of quadrant it in our visual
Yeah.
point of view, and so. If like 1 square in our quadrant is full of garbage, then that'd be about 25%. So there is some estimation and there's some room for error in that,
Yeah.
but we try our best to keep it as accurate and as consistent among each jurisdiction as possible.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sorry, just a question about the numbers. Maybe it might be feelings a little hurt with Del Rio's being so high. On the slide, we have the total number of contaminated flips. If I'm going to compare myself to Sand City, we both have this. We have the same number of contaminated flips, but our percentages were very different.
Yes, so the difference there would be in sample size. Delray Oaks, we had a much smaller sample size. I believe possibly even the smallest.
In comparison to Sand City?
I believe so. We have,
Jerry's house in San City.
in an earlier version of this presentation that was presented to the Technical Advisory Committee, we have an appendix that has more information, including the total number of flips conducted in each jurisdiction. And that's broken down by residential and commercial as well. I can email that to Zoe after this meeting, if you would all be interested in seeing that, so you can kind of understand where those percentages are coming from.
That'd be great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right,
I have,
please.
I remember the initial information regarding 1383 was that there would be like a $10,000 penalty against the city itself. Is that still correct? Because we're talking about penalizing customers, because I thought that was kind of odd that, well, how am I supposed to control all the customers? I mean, all the people in the city to be compliant, and then we get a $10,000 thing. That's one observation of mine. It's probably inaccurate, but anyway. And the other thing is you mentioned that you're not quite sure what the state is going to require. For instance, they may require that the sampling that you did is adequate. Or are they gonna require that every single resident and commercial property is gonna be analyzed? And those results, do you have any idea what they're gonna require before they start penalizing?
So their second part of the question, the regulations actually were what guided us as to how many lids were flipped per route. That's where we got that 25 number, was directly from the Cal Recycle reg. So there wasn't much ambiguity there. And it, we could spend as a whole more money to analyze more data, to get more data out of this type of sampling if we wanted to, but the Technical Advisory Committee and the Shared Cost MOU outlined what the regulations required us to do. So that's where we got the smaller sample sizes, for example. To your first part of the question, there's multiple layers, if you will, of enforcement, I guess. Cal Recycle enforces the jurisdictions, your cities and county, to abide by these regulations. So that's meeting all aspects of the law: edible food recovery, monitoring, infrastructure, education, all of the different aspects of the law. So those are imposed upon the city. And as a part, again, the shared cost MOU, ReGen assists along with the haulers and the city staff in providing those reports on an annual basis back to Cal Recycle. So we feel very confident that the work that we are doing as a technical advisory committee on behalf of all of the cities is meeting the regulations on behalf of the cities, and frankly far exceeding where the state, where many jurisdictions are in the state. And that's due to our infrastructure, that's due to our collaboration, many different things. So I feel confident in that part of the regulations state that the cities, the jurisdictions, are required to enforce at their level to the customers who are non-compliant. And like I said, that.
How do haulers do that? They don't flip lids. They go, they grab it, and they dump it. There's no, that's it. That's about how long it takes them to take a can out. They pull up, bang, bang, they're gone. They have no idea what's in it.
Well,
that would probably increase their time of collecting garbage by, I don't know how.
Actually, every truck is equipped with a camera. To see the items that are dropped in there.
I thought that was only waste management.
No, every truck, even the Monterey disposal trucks, they have a hopper camera which allows the driver to see the contents that are being dumped into the truck.
So we're trying to come by my specific place, they're photographing every.
I can't guarantee you, Director, that every driver is looking at the camera, looking at the content, but I can guarantee you that every truck
It's recorded, and somebody can analyze that
has
information.
a hopper camera. It gives you a live video stream of the materials being dropped into the content, whether it's a green waste, garbage truck, or a recycled truck. The driver does have the ability and technology to see what's being dropped in. The cameras from WM are actually being recorded and observed all the time. So every can is being inspected under the WM brand and the smart truck label. But for this aspect, the drivers do have a visualization, even a colored visualization of what's being dropped.
I've observed that firsthand. My driver has refused my load before because I had plywood in there, and he said it wouldn't compact correctly. So he didn't take my can.
I can testify to the accuracy of those cameras. We got a bill with a fine from Waste Management for having put contamination in our green waste. No, my wife said, no, that can't be the case. So I called Waste Management. I got on the phone. Someone in Texas said, give me your address and I'll look at he said, I'm looking at the film now. You see, you have a gate with the red marking on the front of it. Is that correct? Is that your residence? And I see there's a sack a plastic bag that came with the green waste. I mean, he had it completely nailed. I just, I gave up. We've learned our lesson. It's very accurate. It's pretty amazing technology.
There's a good chance that Leo's going to probably get fined.
Rob, who put the bag in your recycling?
What?
Who put the bag in your?
It was my wife. She was raking up leaves, put them in a bag, and then threw them in the green waste.
She's not here to defend herself.
So, yeah, she's not here to defend herself.
That's her lawyer talking.
Did you have something to add?
Yeah, so to answer your question, Dr. Blackwelder, initial compliance will begin at looking at just a service level. So if a business does not have a food scrap collection or a green waste collection, that's immediately a trigger. They're not compliant. They'll be cross-referencing waivers in our system, our database as well. So the first wave of compliance is looking if they just have the carts on site.
Right.
The second wave of compliance will be digging into the details of the contents of the carts. So I hope that answers your question.
And all this information helps a lot. And that's all I saw was $10,000. This seems kind of draconian, and they're just, the state has now said everybody's gonna be penalized unless they are completely compliant with 1383 for a $10,000. That's like. So obviously there are more layers and then the camera thing, which I thought was still only with waste management on the commercial side, now it's everywhere. And it seems like they're able to zero in very quickly from Dallas or wherever you said it was from. And be able to figure out exactly what's what, so that's kind of cool. Thank you.
No more secrets.
I know, AI. I've been reading all about it, AI is taking over. That's great.
All right, so there's no other questions from the board. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was a pretty thorough discussion and yeah, and letting us know that there's definitely room for improvement out there. So, yeah, all right, thank you very much. We'll move on to I think that's it on the presentations. We're moving on to the discussion and action items. Item 14, receive draft budget for fiscal year 2023-24 and provide direction to staff.
Sure, thank you, Chair. At this time, we have Mark Braxton, our finance manager, who's going to give us a short update. There's not too many updates or additions to our preliminary budget at this time. So we'll give Mark a few minutes to present our budget considerations and draft budget.
I think it's good.
Yeah.
Are you doing this? Okay, all right, good morning, everybody. Ready to go here? We're gonna have a short review of our 2024 preliminary budget. Some of you have seen this information pretty much already. It has not changed much of it all from the last time we saw this presentation. So. Right. Keyboard's not working either.
The down arrow, like the down arrow,
Yeah, it's not working.
the left arrow, what's the right arrow?
Arrows are working.
You got it?
Now we're working. Okay, very good. This first screen here is just kind of a summary of the key elements in the 2024 budget. The number one item is we have proposed a 5% increase in our disposal fees. The table is just showing the change on some of our major items that we have comes across our scales, our solid waste, yard waste, problem waste. You know, we can see what the dollar change is per ton for each of those items. So the total revenue is projected to increase to about $51 million, which is about 6% over what our fiscal 23 budget was, and our 12% over our actual from last year. Disposal fees are expected to increase due to a combination of a rate increase and also slightly higher volumes in fiscal 24. MRF revenue is projected to go down. We're being fairly conservative here. You know, the commodity prices continue to stay somewhat depressed in fiscal 23 and expecting that to continue in fiscal 24. So we're actually looking at MRF revenue to go down to about 7.7 million. We budgeted this year with 12.4 million, so we're not going to get that. Power revenue expected to increase. A combination of better uptime, where we've got uptime, well over 90% now in the LFG area, and also we're getting a slightly better price on our power sales. Operating expenses expected to be about 42 million, which is an increase of about 20% over the fiscal 22 actual number. The biggest component in our operating expenses are our personnel employment costs. They're expected to increase about 15.5%, which is a combination of
COLA increases, some headcount changes, and benefit cost changes. Our health insurance costs, we don't know at this time what our health insurance cost premiums are going to be in fiscal, or in actually they run on a calendar year in 2024, but you conservatively put in a 20% increase over what we have now. Our workers' comp is not changing much. It's going up slightly. But overall, our employment costs are about $19 million in the 2024 budget. The non-salary costs are expected to increase about 14% over the 2023 budget. Combination of factors there, which we'll talk about a little more later. Net income is expected to decrease to 8.6 million from 9.6 million in the fiscal 23 budget. In fiscal 22, we were at 10.5 million. So it's a combination of basically higher operating expenses that are driving that decrease in our net income from our fiscal 23 budget to and fiscal 22. And an important item to note is the district will meet its debt service ratio covenant in this 2024 budget, which is a very important item relating to our 2021 and 2018 bonds that we have outstanding. Now, there's a couple of items that are still open. As I mentioned, we don't have our health insurance premium numbers yet for 2024, so we put in an estimate. And our workers' comp and liability insurance numbers, we have preliminary numbers from SDRMA, but we don't have final numbers. We don't really expect those numbers to change much, if at all, from what's in the preliminary budget. Looking at our revenue mix in 2024, disposal fees, continue to be the biggest number. We're at 77%, then followed by the MRF and power, and then other sales items, which are our sand sales to Don Chapin, and our CNG sale, gas sales that we to green waste from the truck yard. In terms of the disposal fees, where is that coming from in terms of the customer type? Biggest portion is coming from our regional customers, and when you think regional customers, that is Greenway San Jose. That is the biggest single customer the district has. What's also included in the regional customer base are the customers in San Benito County and Santa Cruz County. That's what makes up that. The franchise number and the commercial numbers are pretty much the same. The franchise numbers are all of the local franchise cities, and then the commercial are all of the self-haul customers that can come from Monterey, Santa Cruz, San Benito, Santa Clara County. They come from all over. One of the items that the district has been paying close attention to is the percentage of disposal revenue to total revenue. The district has tried to move away from being heavily dependent on disposal revenue for its operational revenue. And ideally, to get closer to a 50-50 split between disposal revenue and other revenues, which would be primarily MRF revenue. And you can see that we were actually heading in that direction in a couple of years. And then with the fall in commodity prices of the MRF, we've kind of gone back up again, becoming a higher percentage of disposal fee to total revenue. And that's expected to continue on in fiscal 24. Our biggest single line item expenses are our personnel costs. This looks at what makes up the personnel costs. Salaries and wages are the biggest part of that. Then followed by health insurance and the PERS contributions that we make. To the right there is just a summary of the headcount by department. The numbers in red indicate the departments that are actually going to be increasing their headcount in fiscal 24. And we'll have a total headcount of about 134 people. These are our non-salary expenses. These are the biggest expense items. These are ones that are over 500K. Repairs and maintenance are the biggest cost item, and that's primarily three areas. That's the landfill gas area and the power generation. It's keeping all of the engines that generate the power and maintain, and that's about $1.1 million or $1.2 million of that $3.5 million. The next biggest component of that is our shop, which does all of the repair and maintenance work on all of our mobile equipment around the site. And that's about $1 million. And then the next biggest component of that is the MRF, which is maintaining all the MRF equipment. And that's about $600K in the budget. Our recycling services are essentially pretty much all the business we do with Keith Day in processing organics. And you know, that number has grown a bit in the past couple of years as the volume has increased. Gas and oil prices continue to stay very high. So, you know, that number's gone up a bit from what it's been in the past couple of years. Our insurance costs are gone up a little bit from this year. They went up a lot last year, but that's still a big number. Taxes and surcharges, that's what we pay, a combination of things. You know, we prepay a fee to the state and the county for every ton that's landfilled. We also have our health permits and our LAFCO charges and our property taxes that we pay the county. Operating supplies are all of the supplies that are used at places like the MRF and the LFG, just to keep everything operating normally. Professional services is legal fees, engineering services, accounting related fees. Environmental services are the things we have to do for our air permits and other compliance things that we have to do to monitor and make sure we're in compliance with the laws. Outside services would be things like temporary employees, the Falcon fellow who we saw earlier, and just general services, you know, for the district. And office expenses are primarily expensible items, anything from IT equipment to just miscellaneous office supplies. In terms of our capital spend budget for 2024, the budget is 22 million total, combination of the mobile equipment and the capital improvement projects. The biggest capital improvement projects is the M1W power connection, which is continuing, and development of Mod 7, which is continuing. There's some road paving projects. We're doing an extensive remodel of the scale house and some work at the compost site. In terms of equipment, we're looking to buy a scraper for $1.2 million. We've got some other equipment expenses in there. This page here just kind of looks at what our cash activity is like in fiscal 24. You know, you expect cash to increase about $2.5 million. So we'll have total cash in excess of 40 million. And looking at a breakdown of some of that cash, another item that the district is required to do is have a 20% cash operating reserve, meaning we are supposed to have cash on hand to cover at least 20% of our operating costs. And we will do that with this budget as prepared. And then we have our other reserves that we have set up. Our capital infrastructure reserve, which was just set up last year, and our capital equipment reserve, which was just set up last year. So those numbers will be increasing slightly, and we will have enough to cover those reserves. And then we have a couple of existing reserves. We have a closure, post-closure reserve, and an environmental impairment fund reserve. So all of those reserves that we have had, you know, we will be able to continue to cover those. And you can see that our ratio, our debt service ratio is 3.46, which is well in excess of our requirement of 1.25. So overall, it you know, looks like it will be a pretty good solid year that way. So that's the presentation. Any questions? I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much for the detailed budget again. Well, as usual, I'm very glad that you mentioned the different types of reserves, some of which are a work in progress. So I understand. Is that correct?
Well, they're a work in progress in the sense, you know, we review them every year and adjust them as accordingly, you know, just as necessary, particularly the capital reserve. So that reserve will probably get adjusted upward every year based on our capital spend plan.
By work in progress, I thought we were gonna the board was going to talk about a policy.
Well, yeah, we are looking at some other reserves. We're looking at a, potentially a more robust closure, post-closure reserve than what we have now. And maybe some type of a pension CalPERS reserve, which we do not have now. But yes, you're right. And we are still talking about doing that. So in that respect, yes, it is a work in progress.
And that will come back to the board.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll just add a little comments to it. The reserve for post closure right now is set at 1.5 million. If we had to close the landfill down, in 7 months from now, it definitely costs us more than 1.5 million. And that is the discussion that we've had with the finance team, leading to a policy that we can incorporate that would help us fund a closure at some point in the future. Most private entities do that the day they open up their gate. Their gate for operations, they start setting money aside for that cost of the landfill. And as we continue to grow our modules and they continue to get bigger, that number will continue to escalate up and up for the processes that we have to take that are responsibility when we close the landfill down. So I think it is the right time. We have an opportunity to do something for future leaders for this organization that would help really the closure pressure on the community and the public that we serve. So thank you for bringing up that item, Director. It was one of the items that I did want to add to the comment, is that we still may see a number put in this category before the final budget is presented.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think obviously all the reserves, I believe there should be a policy on the board to sign off on it. And I'm impressed and dismayed when you showed the revenue split between disposal and recycle fees. I was impressed because aiming for a 50-50 split sounds extremely ambitious, or like to see that. Maybe dismayed that the graph is obviously going in the wrong direction. Any thoughts on that as to how that trend might be reversed?
Well, unfortunately, we're kind of locked into whatever the MRF commodity prices do. So in the years when you saw the percentage dipping of disposal fees to total revenue, the commodity prices were doing very well. And right now, we're in a spot where the commodity prices are at a low, and then probably, a 5-year low is, in terms of our MRF activity. So it's hard to say. However, we are optimistic that the commodity prices will pick back up and that percentage of disposal fee to total revenue will drop. And yeah, 50% goal is rather ambitious, but that's what we're ideally hoping to get to one day.
And speaking of recycle revenue, I'm thinking on the processing end. Remind me, what is the average processing cost for a ton of single stream recycle?
Well, I don't really have a number for the cost of that off the top of my head, but it's less than what we're charging for processing.
It's in the 20s, mid-20s per ton.
So we're charging $40 roughly for processing a single stream, and it's costing us somewhere, say $25.
And the cost for disposal processing per ton?
I don't have it on top of my head. I can get that for you though.
Pardon?
I don't have it on top of my head.
Are you thinking like the MSW material that comes in?
Well, the budget has combined this detailed list of all of the expenses, but it doesn't highlight or identify the processing cost for the different streams of material. We know what the fees are for the different types of material, and we know what the aggregate cost of processing is for all the materials, but don't have breakdown of the processing costs by material stream. It sounds like, but
We have it.
you know.
In the, you know, the monthly presentation I do now, I now include in there sort of a summary of the MRF activity, since that is a significant part of what goes on here, and it's having a big impact on the district's total results. So that shows kind of like what our revenue is, and then what the costs are, what the MRF costs are against that revenue. So we can get a number for the MRF, which is probably more significant than any of the others. But we could do the same thing for the regular MSW material that comes in. We gotta do the same thing for power. We can look at the power revenue and the cost of operating the power plant down there and come up with a cost.
It might be worth looking at when we're talking about the fees. We also have an understanding of the processing cost first.
It would be fair to say that the stuff that goes across the scales and goes straight to the landfill is the cheapest to process, and it just gets dumped and compacted and buried. But of course, it has some, it has really no value, so.
Well, like baseball, we tracked everything.
I know you,
So we
I know you
got-
have enough.
Yeah,
I know you have enough.
And we can get it.
Just give it some thought.
So Reese, you have a question?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Were you done?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Garth. Can you go back to your first slide? And the major budget elements. And revenues increasing, that's your first line, that's good news. Operating expenses is your sixth line, or fifth line, that's going up too. But we have $9 million more revenue than total operating expenses. Shown on that first slide.
Mhm.
I'm waiting for the first slide.
No.
I don't get too far ahead of it.
Okay.
So the top line is 51 million. The fifth line is 42 million in expenses, so we've got 9 million more coming in than going out, which sounds great. Maybe the problem is the expenses are increasing. And the net income is decreasing, so even though we got a $9 million bubble above expenses, our net income is decreasing, so. Is that a concern? Or are we doing fine?
Well, overall, I think we're doing fine. Because if you look at, the fact that we're generating more cash each year, we're able to meet all of our obligations in terms of our debt service and our reserves. And we're able to fund our capital spending programs. So that overall, we are doing fine. And this fiscal 24 budget is probably a bit of a dip in seeing net income decline, but it's I don't think it's a sign of bad things are coming or are happening. As we've talked about, we need to, just hope that the MRF picks up in terms of its contribution to the overall district operations, and we'll see a pickup in income again. We've had a couple of really good years. And that was a combination of, tip fees going up. We got some additional revenue for additional volume and material coming in, which increased our tip fees. So we don't have any new contracts that we're, looking at in fiscal 24. So we've got the existing contracts. And then also we've had some very, very good MRF pricing in the past couple of years. So, fiscal 22 may have been an extraordinarily good year. So I don't think we're in a situation where we need to worry about what's happening.
Okay, So we're bringing in more than we're spending, that's good. We're not here to make money and sit on it, so, the surplus that we're continuing to have in FY '24. Do you foresee it mostly going to those three items on the next slide, the health insurance, works comp, liability insurance, et cetera? Or do you see it as being stashed away to fund larger capital costs like, some future organics processing facility?
Well, every year we can expect to see an increase in our employment costs. Simply because, there's cost of living adjustments every year that come in. And we're not expecting major changes in our head count from one year to the other, but that cost element, the total employment costs will continue to grow every year. However, we'll still have cash over and above that. And as we talked about a little bit before, we have reserves that we have set up. We have some additional reserves we probably will want to set up going forward. So we'll be looking at taking the cash balance that we have and segregating more of that into reserve categories. And then also too, there is the funding of the capital spending projects.
So it seems like a board activity to have a discussion someday about what we do with $5 to $10 million, above expenses every year. And we have a lot of employees that are making less than $28 an hour, means they're not making a livable wage. And so one question would be to be more aggressive, putting money into wages, but I don't know if we can afford that. So that's the kind of thing that comes up to mind when I see that our net income is decreasing, but we're still in really good shape. But I don't know what we're gonna do with us being in really good shape. And so that's what I kind of hope that we can have that discussion.
Sure, I know I have a little issue, and I think I understand your question. Some of the reserves that we put away have been, so that the capital reserve would be more of the equipment that we need. And historically, sometimes we've had to borrow to get some of those equipments. And we may not have to borrow in the future to do that. So you're right, at some point, we may want to have an evaluation of what we have in that funding. And are we okay with it to continue to grow, or is there a certain project that is needed immediately for us to maybe rank course some of the activities happening here at the organization? So it allows us another account that we can access to fulfill some of the needs that we feel may come in the future.
Yeah, we can have a discussion. Would you rather borrow money in the future like we have in the past so that we can pay people more now? Or do we rather pay people less now and not have to borrow in the past? I mean, that's a good policy discussion. The last thing is 2 details. Coming in today, I just noticed, as I've noticed for a lot of years, our signs are dirty, they're not cohesive. Keith signs are dirty, the district signs are dirty, and it just doesn't reflect well, like what we do or who's who, it's just kind of hodgepodge. So is there money in this budget, or is it too late? Can we put money in this budget to just clean up the corridor?
We have, addressing that, yes, there is a signage project underway right now as we speak. And the public education group is heading that up. And there is money in the budget now to look after getting every sign on the site replaced.
How much will you pay me to watch Keith's sign?
I'll take care of
The last thing is cameras. We live in a dirty neighborhood because we're the landfill, and maybe because we're remote. We're probably not unlike a lot of other remote county land areas, road areas. But, we're doing a lot to clean up our neighborhood. And this district just put out a camera on Lapis Road to reduce, take care of the disease and not the symptom, of dumping. Don't just keep picking it up, but try to do something to reduce it in the first place. So that's been really great. And then had to come back to here because there was some crime on site. And so now there's no longer a camera out on Lapis Road. So it would be nice to buy another camera. And if it's 20 to 30K to buy these cameras, these really fancy cameras, they're more like robots, talk about AI, they're not just a camera. But anyway, is there money in the budget where we could buy 1 or 2 more of these cameras so we're not moving them back and forth, the dumping or the theft,
Yes.
Have either one.
Yes, we could handle that expenditure.
So is it too late to put that in this budget or
Well, it's in there.
what's in there?
Well, there is money in there for expenses like that. That if
Okay, so it's
we,
kind of miscellaneous expense, small
Yeah.
enough to.
it falls into sort of the operating expense category. You know, which is not, you know, every dollar that's in that category is not defined to go to a certain spot. It's kind of used as necessary. And for projects like you just described. So we can do that. But just to back up for a second too, about your point previously about wages and living wages. What we are doing in the fiscal 24 budget is there is a group of employees, one of the bargaining units is going to get a one-time additional COLA adjustment to their wages, and they are the lowest paid unit here. So they will be getting the normal COLA adjustment that everybody's going to get, and then they're also going to get another COLA adjustment on top of that to bring everybody up to a higher wage level. So we are addressing that, and that is in the 24 budget
Right,
numbers.
so let's say that brings up from $18 an hour to $20 an hour, ballpark, but $28 is livable. So with this surplus, it'd be nice to have that policy discussion. Can we be more aggressive to get to that $28 before they die or move on?
Well,
Or maybe we can't afford it, I don't know.
you know, every year we look at what our wage levels are, you know, and we look at what are the wages that are payable in the area, and what it costs to live here. And, you know, if it's considered necessary or prudent to do something in the future, yeah, we will certainly look at, you know, increasing or adjusting people's wage levels to get them up to a livable wage level. But we are doing something in fiscal 24 for sure.
Thank you, Chair, I think so, yeah, you could. Thanks, Darga.
If I could make a comment regarding the illegal dumping that's happening on Rapid Road. The illegal dumping and litter abatement task force actually recently presented to the County Board of Supervisors regarding a need for a study and some cameras for monitoring, and that rested with the Board of Supervisors. So there has been a request at the county level and in coordination with ReGen for this type of financial support as it relates to legal dumping in our entire county.
Well, that's a great point, and thanks to Felipe and Jay, I mean, we're doing it, right? And so they're probably gonna look a little bit at what we've been doing because they haven't done it, you know, so this is an example of this district staff being on sort of the cutting edge, by getting the camera out there, more than just the camera. Maybe someday you could describe, you know, what's going on with these devices that help reduce theft or reduce dumping, more than just a camera. But that's great to hear, and I'm just glad that we're already implementing something, but they'll probably up the game that we're doing, which is great. Thank you.
Just have some comments on that specific request for cameras on Lapis Road. I'm glad to hear that there's a countywide effort looking at it. I mean, we have a small dumping problem, illegal dumping problem in Pacific Grove. Who would have thought? So I think that's the right venue, and not having specific what appear to be board requests for some action taken by ReGen outside of the district footprint. And yeah, that's first thought. And second thought is in terms of labor expenses, I think compensation for labor is best carried. That discussion is through MOU discussion in closed session. And I think it's inappropriate to have an open discussion outside of MOU negotiations.
Anyone else? I do have a couple of questions. I mean, at least generally speaking, policy. Notice and stuff, generally, not the specifics. I'm personally, I'm comfortable with that level of discussion. But my question is, this may be just nitpicking, but so I understand commodity prices for the MRF are down, but it says processing fees and CRV revenue due to lower commodity prices. But this CRV revenue, it may not be much, but that doesn't change really, does it?
No, it doesn't. No, that's not affected by commodity prices. No,
Yeah.
we get what we get based on whatever material
It's like, it's more a function of, the volume that we handle. And
Correct.
Anything, we're probably handling more, right?
It's gone up a little bit, but not very much. It's been kind of flat last couple of years.
And then mostly I just have a couple of comments. The cash on hand, I argued, or I've said before, I think to Felipe, that if we did have to close down tomorrow, we have cash on hand to close it down.
Yeah.
And that's at least, it could be transferred over into a sequestered reserve, thank you, at least it's there. It's good to know we have it there. And then, what else? Oh, revenue. I've mentioned this before too. It just irks me that we're burning gas, we're flaring off gas, and when we could be generating power, generating fuel for our trucks, and that all is a source of revenue, and reduce the expense side too. So I really want to see these projects move forward as quickly as possible over the line, and I could see that it would affect our revenue.
Absolutely.
Significantly.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, yes, definitely it would. And as you know, we have projects to address those things, and they are in some degree of being underway. But yeah, that ultimately one day we will be doing all that.
All right, those were my comments, and there's no other. Leo, please.
I know the answer to this question, but I'm gonna ask you because I want you to say it. What is the annual revenue for CRV?
For CRV, it's probably,
Round number.
it's probably about $5 to $6 million.
Well, I didn't know.
Let's keep them absolute cans coming there.
I'm doing my best. All right, I didn't realize it was that big. Just since it's under discussion action, I will open this up to public comment. Is there any public comment on receiving the draft budget for fiscal year 23-24? Please approach the podium if you're in the room, or raise your hand if you're online. Seeing no one approaching the podium, and
No hands on.
there was public comment. An excellent presentation. Thank you very much, and thank you for having answers to all your questions. All right. There's nothing else on that. We'll move to 15, schedule a public hearing for June 23rd, 2023, board meeting to consider fiscal year 2023-24 to be increases all gate rate items effective July 1st and July 1, 2023. Then B, single stream recycling rates will remain at $40 per ton for all member agencies.
Chair, do we need to take a vote on this piece of draft?
Ooh, I don't think so, but Rob, did we need to vote on receiving the draft budget? Okay. Yeah, we will eventually vote on the actual budget.
Right, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for asking. All right,
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to introduce this item. We do have a proposed tip fee increase for all rate items effective July 1st, 2023. And we also have a proposed single stream recycling rate will remain at the $40 per ton for processing for all member agencies. I did want to outline a couple items in the rate sheet that are that have changed. Appliances or refrigerators that come with the certification of removal would only be $5 in the rate sheet. Appliances that would require refrigerators to be refrigerated to still be removed will be $20 an appliance. We also removed several categories from the tree stumps. We had a category for stumps 2 to 3 feet and 3 to 5 feet, and they had different rates. So we wanted to streamline that process and get one rate. And so we decided we were only gonna, working with KDI, Keep Day, and his team, we came to a conclusion that they process materials 3 feet and over in dimension differently than everything else, so we gave that its own its existing rate is gonna go from $102 to $107, which is about a 4.9% increase. We also added in a line for clear film and hoop housing plastic. Before we had an outlet, it was $0 a ton. Currently, we don't have an outlet. It'll now be $50 a ton. Fumigation plastics has gone from 102 to 107. And we also added in a push off for the regular drip tape and fumigation plastic at $50. And also we added in a jump start fee for tending to cars that will not start on the tip pad. So it requires a little bit of choreographing a process to get them to a safe location, pulling people from their regular task to apply a jump start will now be $50 at the customer. And so those were some highlight changes in the actual rate sheet itself. And we'll be happy to take any questions on the public notification for the next thing. Thank you.
Great.
Regarding the increase public hearing, will we be hearing like we normally do, the comparables from other landfills?
I think we have it in our presentation.
It helps us to.
Okay, yes, we
See where
can definitely, yes.
And then on the single stream recycling, I was interested to hear earlier that it cost us 25 ballpark, but we charge 40. Is the 15 delta to overhead, or what do we do with the delta? How do we justify 40 if it costs us 25 to process?
I'll take a crack at that. I think there's a little bit, we have to take into consideration some of the CRV and the buyback in monitoring what the actual expense is. So we can go up and down for what the processing fee is going to be based on what we get back in return. Jay and Garth, I think you guys can add to the response as well.
So, Joe, that $15 delta, if you look at it, would be for going to our reserves that we have set up. We'll be going into having money for our capital projects that we need to fund, and just other general operational activities around the site.
Okay,
So
that's
it's
what I figured. So the optics are better if we say that it does cost $40 to process when you consider all in. It's not just a matter of, sorting the garbage the day it comes in.
Right, yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, we're paying off a large bond, right?
Yeah, we do have a slight bond liability, yeah, but $40 million.
To this point on the processing cost, I think we just heard an educated guess, I'll call it. We don't have a study, and so we don't know what all the components and that's my understanding. So I think jumping to conclusions on what is educated guess and between the processing costs and the fee, that differential. So I would hold off on drawing many conclusions on that. That's my thought.
And another factor that comes into play as well is a lot of our pricing is market driven. So we will be looking at what are other places charging for processing material. And so we'll set our price that, okay, well, we're not going to be the highest. And as I'm sure you know, historically, we've tended to be on the low end of the fees, whether it's bringing in the, trash or anything else. And that has been the philosophy here at the district, to be competitive, but we want to be towards the lower end. And I can't say, as I'm standing here, if our processing fees are the lowest, but I know they are among the lowest of any processing fees of any landfill in the Bay Area.
Yeah, it's a good topic for our public hearing. That's why I bring it up now. We have a better understanding of what goes into the $40 fee and what comes out of it. That would help us.
Yeah, our revenue from time can fluctuate from $200 a ton to $275. And then the high time, then you take that subtract your expense, and that's why it fluctuates. So we track it every month, and you got a copy of what the pricing does, so. We normally do the calculation at the end of the month. Let's see where we're at, but we do it every month.
Thank you. All right, so we need to schedule a public hearing. Is there any, I'm gonna open public comment for scheduling of this public hearing. Is there any comment from the public on this? Please approach the podium or raise your hand if you're online.
Yeah, sure then.
Okay. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. I believe we need a motion to schedule this. Have a motion.
I'll make it.
Thank you, Leo.
I'll second.
Thank you, Kim. We have a motion and a second. Any final comments on this? Great. All those in favor?
I
Opposed? All right, passes unanimously with one absence. Or two absent. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Moving on to item 16, approved lease and feasibility study for the CETOS group biochar pilot study.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, we're gonna have Guy Petrobler, the Director of Engineering, present a short narrative of where we're at with CETOS and biochar and the agreement that we have for the land that they're gonna be using for their study.
Good morning, Chair Campbell and Board of Directors.
Morning.
Their slideshow is being loaded, and happy to give you an update on the Citrus Group biochar pilot study. Next slide, please. As you may recall, the staff brought this to the board in January of this year, and more recently, we informed the Finance Committee at their May meeting about the status and the draft agreement that is included in today's packet. Finance Committee recommended that we bring this item to the board today. So I'm going to provide a brief summary of high level of what's involved around the pilot study. To answer the question of who, the pilot study is between ReGen and this partnership shown on the screen here, involving the Citrus Group, Mayo Ryan, who you've met before as the CEO, Monterey Pacific, a large agricultural entity in Monterey County and elsewhere, Steve McIntyre representing them. Keith Day Company, the contracted operator of the compost facility here at ReGen, and Applied Gaia, the equipment provider and patent holder on the particular piece of pyrolysis equipment. Next slide, please. The what in the pilot study is an investigation on producing a biochar primarily from wood or the wood chips that are considered overs that are screened out of the compost materials before final finishing measures of compost. So these compost overs are wood chips, larger wood particles, and through a pyrolysis process would be converted to a biochar, and the quality of that biochar will be investigated to see how what kind of characteristics it has, how it fits on a range of quality of biochar and cost of production. Those kind of things will be all part of the Citrus Group biochar pilot study. Next slide, please. The where, it's going to be at the former site of the old Last Chance Mercantile, which is there in the middle of this photo. in the little yellow frame proposed project site. That's just next to the leased truck yard facility, and Heath Day composting is there on your left, the larger area. The materials will be the compost overs, the wood chips will be delivered by Keith Day staff to the biochar project site location for processing, and then the biochar product returned to the composting facility as an admix. Next slide, please. The when? Well, the when is now. The equipment has been delivered to the site, is being set up, permits are being obtained, and some startup commissioning type activities are being taken care of. We anticipate that following a board approval, should that be your decision, that the processing would begin on in June of this year. And the base study period is 1 year, ending June 30th of 2024. That would actually be 13 months. There is an option for a 1 year extension by mutual consent to end of June 2025 if all parties agree to extending the pilot study to that point. Next slide, please. The how? Well, it's a conversion of woody material, the compost overs and the woody feedstock in this diagram through a pyrolysis process shown there in the center of the screen to convert those wood materials at high heat into a biochar product, and that biochar will be utilized during the pilot study in finished compost, and will be the material that's being researched. So it'll be tested and evaluated at different times during the pilot study. Next slide, please. This is actual photos of the pyrolysis unit, the Applied Gaia B3 machine. It is photographed here at the manufacturing site. It has now been received at ReGen and is being set up for installation. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. The why? Well, the why is it serves multiple benefits. This is high-level representation of those benefits. Under waste management, it takes a wood chip material that has limited reuse and elevates it to a higher and better use for compost admix, and that is used in soil improvement, and that is helpful in water retention, fertilizer, nutrient retention, as well as carbon sequestration. So there's some contribution to lowering carbon emissions. And what's not part of the pilot study is the ability by the pyrolysis equipment to have energy production. And so that may come back in the future if biochar is considered an appropriate method for the district to invest in the future. And next slide, please. Just a high-level summary, the relationship of the pilot study. It's fairly simplified here, and it is basically ReGen's going to assist in the Citrus Group's efforts to conduct and complete the pilot study. our assistance will be a reimbursable assistance from actual costs, not intended to include personnel or labor costs, but other costs incurred would be reimbursed to ReGen by the Citrus Group for access to land, water, and electricity, and having access to the biomass materials, the wood chips, compost overs. Citrus Group would invest the capital. They would own, operate, and maintain the equipment for the pilot study, coordinate the desired research around the biochar and sampling and testing, and any certification to the quality of the biochar would all be managed by Citrus Group. So that is reflected in an agreement that was attached to the board report. District Council prepared that agreement for the parties and was included in the packet for your review and consideration. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Guy. Yes, Bill.
Oh, thank you very much for the presentation. So we've reviewed this material at prior meetings. I was just wondering, forgive me, I thought we approved this, or no? Did we approve anything?
You did.
With the biochar?
You approved us to enter into getting an agreement established, and so conceptually approved the project, but we had to do the background work was to get an actual agreement documented, and this is where we approved that actual document of signing. We did approve the concept of bringing it here and doing it here. We just needed this final piece to make it official and have an agreement between the two agencies.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Bruce, or, okay, go ahead, Karen.
So just so I'm clear, this project as it goes forward now will just be processing woody materials at this point. But it's my understanding from the conversation I had after the meeting where this was presented that they could also actually use this process for other materials in the future.
We are gonna look at the other material. The other material is a biosolid that is the residual left from Monterey 1 water. And so we're gonna take a look to see if we could actually process that material. There is a deadline for our landfill to stop receiving those biosolids from Monterey 1 water 1/1 of 2025. And so they're gonna be looking for a solution as well. If they don't have a solution, they'll wind up shipping it at a very significant cost off-site. So we are gonna look at, trying to problem solve in advance of the issue coming down the pipe. And that's not only for our agency, but theirs.
And in my conversation, I asked some specifics, like, could you process some plastics, some bioplastics and so forth? And he indicated they probably could. So it would be perhaps something that we want to look at as far as what else we can do with this machinery, because it could solve a lot of the problems.
That is the intent of the pilot, is to figure out what it will do for us, and is it beneficial, and is there any environmental impacts along the way. So we're gonna take a lot of considerations this pathway, and we can't forget about the joint feasibilities items that we have. We're gonna start seeing results from that feasibility, which may lead us down either this exact pathway or maybe a different pathway that gives us a better business case. So I think this next 6 months, as we start seeing results come in from that feasibility, it may cause us to focus more intensely on this one item, or look at some other options that will be a better business case around solutions to byproducts. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Bruce? Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Guy, for this presentation. It's probably the second or third you've given on this topic, and it's helpful to revisit it so it can sink in better each time. Looking at your chart on the how, wood waste to biochar, and I'm a little bit confused at that point where you get the pyrolysis product, and that can either go to the market as biochar, or it can go to Keith Day for further composting to finish it. And my question is, how can a product be ready for one market, but not be ready for, let's say, the composting market? So where does it go on the truck? How is it used when it leaves here to go to market?
So I'll take the question. So the slide is a readily available slide off the web. And so the biochar sold at market is conceptually something that can be done in the future and is done by others who are already in the biochar market. What's before the board is a pilot study. And that pilot study is not a production project. It's a research project that's investigating the efficacy of this particular equipment with the wood chip overs at the district that are available to be put in the pyrolysis equipment. And so the biochar produced in the pilot study will only be used for a compost admixture as part of the finished composting process. And that will then be used by one of the pilot study partners, Monterey Pacific, in some of their agricultural practices. And again, it's small volume at a small level. And so their efforts are somewhat in the field, are also somewhat investigatory for this specific material.
Okay, thanks, Guy. That helps. So the product from our pilot project, is it useful for compost as is, or must it be, as the chart shows, sent for finishing?
No, the biochar is, this chart is intended to show, or this figure is intended to show that the biochar goes right into the compost. So there's no additional finishing planned after receiving it from the pyrolysis unit. It's
Okay, so when it comes out of pyrolysis, it's as useful as it's going to be.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get a sense of your investigation here. It operates over a range of temperatures, and there's, depending on the type of the feedstock, there will be a smaller range of temperatures that's ideal for that particular feedstock to transform it to a biochar with higher quality properties. And
I might be able to help. I think I understand your question. It's just an additive to the finished compost. Compost is done, biochar is done, and then there's a request from the customer for a specific recipe, X amount of biochar plus X amount of compost, and then that gets mixed up and sent out to that customer. So there are two finished products that are added together to make a supercharged compost, but there's no further composting required. It's a completed finished product that's getting added to another completed product, and then those are going out to a specific customer who requested that blend.
Okay, I have more questions that I won't ask, but there's one different kind of question I want to ask. And if the public says to me, are you just burning it? And if we move in the future to tires or plastics or MSW or whatever else, how is this different to the layperson than incineration?
so the off gases in the heat process are being utilized in the chamber to maintain the heat of chamber. So there's a much reduced, we're talking reducing emissions from by a minimum of 98% to something closer to 99 point something percent. So it's reducing an already reduced abatement process. So, and that's those emissions are being reduced because the off gases from the woody products are being used in the heat of combustion to generate the heat.
No burning. No burning whatsoever. A lot of heat, but no burning.
So that's what we tell the public, if they ask what is this incineration, and we say,
No burning. A lot of heat, no burning.
Yeah, there's no loss of mass, which would be burning. Burning is a mass reduction process. This is a heat process.
all right, thank you, Chair.
Absolutely. Wendy?
Just had a couple questions specific to the contract. So, and also, before I say that, I want to thank everyone for like holding the hand of this process. It's touched a number of different agencies. And I'm just glad that we're making forward progress here. So on item number 3.01, which is Article 3, which speaks to utilities and taxes, there's a comment that says that with the written permission of the district, situs shall have the right of first refusal for any excess portable or potable as well as non-potable water resulting from the district landfill operation charged to actual cost. I'm just wondering, is there a water requirement for this biochar project? And if so, is there, or if not, is there more context around what this provision for water is for and whether or not this contract is considered the written permission?
So I can answer the process side if Rob wants to then answer the agreement side after that. But on the process side, there's a couple needs of use for water. There's a need for dust control in loading of the compost overs, the wood chips into the at the front end of the process. You have to mitigate particulate matter from becoming dust and becoming airborne. There's the same need at the exit of the process where the biochar is then transferred by a conveyor belt into a storage basin. So there too, there's a need to prevent and mitigate airborne particles. Separately, there is some cooling water that is utilized in the pyrolysis equipment. If you recall the January meeting, there are 3 different zones inside the pyrolysis chamber, and those zones can be temperature controlled by the operator to seek ideal temperatures in each of those zones, and water is used in can be used in each of those zones to help adjust temperatures at, in the cooling phase. So that's the process need for water.
Okay, so I guess from a contract perspective, I know how access to water and water rights is a hotly contested issue. And so I would just think that to be very clear that we're talking about for first right of refusal for water as needed to operate the biochar process. So if we could add that clarification, I think that would just keep everyone on the same page. And then on the other item 4, Article 4.07 speaks to odor control. And I spent Wednesday morning or Tuesday morning, one of those days this week, with the air pollution control district, when we talked a lot about odor control issues. And so I know that this provision speaks to the responsibilities for odor control. There's a further provision 4.12, which speaks to sites being required to fulfill all legal obligations for other agencies, including air district. But there are air district odor control regulations. I know that we're opening up this. The city of Marina is embarking on the study for odor, the odor study. And so as we add in potential odor generating things into this whole area, I just want to, I want to call it out
specifically, and make sure that we were connecting the odor control 4.07 back to the 4.12. And there was one, statement, I think here it says, centers shall not be considered in default if offensive odors are generated occasionally, provided the facility is operated according to provisions of this agreement and lease agreement. And so, I think we would also just recognize that, centers shall not be considered in default if offensive odors are generated, but we still need to be in compliance with the air board requirements for odor generation. So just wanted to be really clear that we're acknowledging potential for odor.
Thank you.
Chair, can I make a brief follow-up on that?
Yeah, yes.
Because we have similar language in other facility documents. That offensive odors are not a default because they're expected to happen. But I think what I want to say about what Wendy's saying is that they may be compliant, but if it's generating odors, that we are ready to monitor those. So we're not adding to the odor problem we may already be having. And still everyone's compliant, but it's not cool that there's new odors wafting into the neighborhoods that are compliant. That we try to stay on top of that from the beginning.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment on that real quick?
If you would, just give us a.
Those are my only comments. Yeah.
Any other, board? I just, I'll get you to say it. I have a couple concerns, thank you for the presentation. When all said and done, I just want to be comfortable that we are actually reducing the net carbon footprint. I saw reference to Earth. I guess they're supposed to regulate and quantify the amount of carbon that's being sequestered, then it can be sold. But I don't know if they have a calculator or something. I want to just be sure that however much carbon we're releasing now is going to be in total reduced, because the last thing I want to do is claim that we're sequestering carbon when they are just selling permission slips for somebody else to produce that same amount of carbon. So when all said and done, I want to be sure that there is a net reduction in carbon. So I feel comfortable about this. And I know it's probably, we'll have to look into this Earth and see if that's some sort of calculator or something that might help us do that. Also, I believe in the staff report, there was reference to the feasibility study actually touching on this, taking a look at this. Is that true? Were we able to slip part of this?
It was part of the initial study to begin with, so it was already there. This came along at the same.
So biochar was already part of it.
The study will look at all the options. So
okay.
This would be included in those options in the study.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. No more questions from the board right now. We'll open it up to public comment. And Mr. Day, I know you're
No, just a quick comment. I know with the biochar, there's been a lot of studies done that it helps odor control and a lot of different things. And that was a lot of our purpose, that it, as far as being beneficial to the compost and the idea of mixing it with the compost, it helps it cure and makes a better product, but also helps reduce odors, which would be helpful for our food waste compost, which, Monterey Pacific helps us utilize that material, the food waste compost, and then the biochar is just a great source of odor minimization, but also makes a much better product. And the purpose of blending it, it just like ages and cures, and through studies that they've done through applications and field trials, that's been very helpful. So, and it just works with us doing the composting. They're a big, great customer of ours, and it just kind of fits. But to the odor complaint, it definitely helps. So hopefully that's a positive, not a negative.
all right. That's good to hear. Is there any other member of the public who would like to comment on this before we enter into this agreement? Please raise your hand online or push the podium. All right, seeing no one, we'll close public comment on this item. Any last comments? I think those are great additions. And Rob, that's pretty clear that the two things that we strengthen up clarify that the water is being used for the biochar process.
Right.
And that we kind of strengthen up the odor.
I think the other one is in there if you read it through. I just want to be clear, the only amendment that I would be asking for, and I'll make the motion to approve the contract in front of us with the amended language to add water for the biochar and all the things about that.
Great, thank you. Second. Thank you. All right, we have a motion, a second. No final comments. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Very much unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. Unanimous. Moving on to staff reports. Review finance, operating, and recycling reports.
Thank you. We'll have Mark Grayson.
Okay, good morning again. We are 10 months into the fiscal year, so we're getting close to the finish line. April was another pretty solid month, you know, in terms of nothing spectacular happened, revenue or expense wise. Our revenue was about 280K over budget for the month. And our expenses were about 400K over budget for the month. The primary reason for that is we had a lot of maintenance work being done with the LFG power generating machinery. So that was a big expense for the month. So the R&M costs for the month are over budget. However, R&M costs for the year to date still remain about 400K under budget. So the maintenance work that was done in April was expected, was known. It was going to happen, so it wasn't a surprise. So bottom line, in April, we ended up with a net income of about 780K, which was about 15K below budget for the month. Year to date, our total revenue is about 41 million, and we're about 650,000 over budget for the year to date. Our operating expenses are about 32 million, and we're about $1.4 million over budget in terms of operating expenses. Bottom line is our net income for the year is about 8.4 million, and we're about 130K over budget for the year to date in terms of net income. So we're still staying ahead of plan there, and it will. I expect this probably the next 2 months, May and June, are probably going to be very similar to what April is. Although I don't think we're going to see the same repair and maintenance cost expense. So we may see a slightly better result on the bottom line. In terms of our material activity, we have received about 821,000 tons of material so far in 10 months this year, and we're about 107,000 tons ahead of material receipts from last year, which is a reflection of some of our contracts that we signed in late fiscal 22, and we are seeing an uptick in material in the past couple of months, a lot of which related to storm cleanup activity. So the material incoming has increased in that area. Our diversion percentages are staying, relatively comparable. Our diversion percentage through the rolling 12 months through April of this year is 60.8% versus 62.6% for the same rolling 12-month period last year. So the diversion percentages, and this is for the entire MRF, have not fluctuated a lot, certainly in the past couple of years. And actually, if you go back to prior years, that diversion percentage has not changed significantly at all. So that's a brief summary of where we are through April. Any questions? I'd be happy to take them.
Any questions? New comments? Thank you, Garth. Like last time, it sounds like we're, other than the unknowns of the sudden repairs and stuff, looks like a pretty tight budget. So
right, yeah.
Right along.
There are some things going on with the LFG machinery right now. I know they have routine maintenance, which they know they have to do, and we had a couple of things break, and there has been some effort had to be put out to try and find the parts to make the repairs, but you know, the crew at the LFG is doing a really good job, you know, staying on top of all that and keeping everything running.
Yeah, great. And it seems like it, I've heard of, rumor we're hearing of more issues way, you know, when I first got on board, and it seemed to be fewer and fewer. That's great. All right, thank you, Brett. Moving on to 18, which is report on the TAC and SB 1383, April 19th, 2023.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, we have Zoe present the 5 items that we're discussing, the promotion. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a small report. I'll try to be brief, as to our April 19th, TAC meeting that we had held. The first item that we discussed was the MOU that you all approved in consent today for the shared costs for fiscal year 2024 between ReGen and member jurisdictions for SB 1383 compliance. So thank you for approving again. Item number 2 is reporting that is required per CalRecycle. If you recall, at the beginning of 2022, there were some grants issued to each of your member jurisdictions and 4 activities outlined to assist in meeting SB 1383 compliance. So this was just some basic reporting, and pleased to say that we've gotten all that reporting into CalRecycle to make sure those grants are up to date. Item number 3 has to do with some road work that the County of Monterey is doing on Del Monte Boulevard. We wanted to make this known to the TAC because we have haulers in the room at the TAC, and they're constantly crossing with their large trucks across the railroad tracks. And there was some, as you probably all experienced, really poor pavement issues after the last round of storms. So I'm pleased to report that they have done some patching of the pavement with asphalt, so it is better. And this morning, actually, as I was driving in, there were more crews out there reassessing the issue and assessing to see if they are going to do more repairs to that area. So that's great for all of our customers and our haulers that are crossing on a regular basis. Item number 4 was scheduling approvals of the green waste franchise rate increase. So these are increases that are effective July 1. These are going before your councils within the coming month. HF&H is reaching out to city staff to schedule those directly, and you'll be hearing those rate increases very soon. And the last item is a new item. It's a green waste, it applies to green waste recovery member jurisdictions only, and it's a checklist and monitoring of the actual contract that each of your cities hold with green waste. And so we already have some activities that are outlined in the shared cost MOU that HF&H was doing prior. It was reviewing the quarterly and annual reports and providing assistance for rate increases. This goes above and beyond that to provide an actual checklist of all of the items that are in each of your contracts and perform regular maintenance of that. So any items that the hauler, that green waste is required to provide, they will be scored on if they're meeting those items or not. And that's both beneficial for your staff to understand where there are items that need improvement, and for green waste also to understand, you know, if there's anything that needs to be completed that is not currently being completed. So HF&H will be monitoring that, and that was approved as well as in the MOU this morning. So that'll be helpful as we move forward and we have any sort of changes and rollover of jurisdictional staff. I know we've had some new faces coming in and on and off our TAC, and some new faces as well at green waste recovery. So we'll have a better understanding of how we're all doing together and those relationships contractually. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks.
I just have to make a comment that they still need to do some painting out there. It's really hard to tell where the left turn is.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit dangerous, so.
Oh, referring to the left-hand turn lane on the county.
Be reminded to redo the painting after they do the repairs.
Okay, well, this is county public works, so we can request, of course. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, on the way in, I happened to see Wendy was out there with the crew. I talked to her before the meeting. She said that she kind of has them put to the front of the line as far as repairing that.
Great.
So maybe passing on a message that, as along with that, maybe striking at least a certain distance either way, so that when people come in, they can see exactly where they're at.
Okay. Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah, this asphalt issue is an example of our neighborhood or our site, our district site is bigger than our campus here. because it attracts so much traffic to come here that it impacts our environment outside. So the dumping and the poor roads are in part an artifact of a lot of trucks coming here and people coming here. And so we have an effect on our surrounding neighborhood. And I know that's why that's one reason that Windy is getting on the county. But there's been cyclists down, injured there. It's not just our customers, but it's the general public using the road, and it's recreationists that are trying to do the right thing and use their bicycle. And it's a very more dangerous for a bicycle than it is for a car to go over that area. So it's great that Wendy's trying her best to get it expedited to fix it.
Yeah, these improvements are greatly appreciated by our staff and our customers and the haulers. I personally completely blew out. 5 o'clock on Friday after a board meeting. It was not the right day for me to blow a tire, but it happened. So yeah, take it slow through there. And I've also seen quite a bit of swerving traffic to avoid particular sections where folks that drive that corridor regularly know where the larger potholes are compared to the better areas. And so that could cause a traffic concern, of course, as well.
Foggy nights.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for the feedback on that one. Great.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, can see any other correspondence, is that correct? Okay. General manager communications.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a few today. We did attend the microgrid conference this week. Guy and myself, so the director of engineering and the general manager attended microgrid conference. We'll look to bring a little bit more detail after we get a chance to bounce back the two separate pathways we took on the education of microgrids. Now, what I can share is there's a lot of interest around microgrid. You have microgrid 101, where people are just entering the concept. And then you actually have microgrids that have been completed. They've gone through feasibility, what they were looking for, what they were trying to get done. And I think the two takeaways that I could just take from a 30,000 foot level is know what we want and know who we're working with. And what is the benefits of doing the both together, and really analyzing it as much as you can. And for someone in construction, you probably understand this term is measure twice and cut once. There's a lot of money into it. They also believe that getting materials and assets for a microgrid will become even more difficult to get in the future as more people are entering the endeavor of microgrid. Why do we call it microgrid? Mainly because the overall grid itself no longer has more supply than demand. Demand is higher than the supply. The grid is about 100 years old. And if you were to take a company that loses power for 2 days, and in those 2 days, they can manufacture $10 million in product, that is the downfall. So a lot of these big manufacturing companies and large organizations are looking for more reliable resource of energy for a longer period of time to have less impact. The expense of not doing anything could outweigh the expense of actually building a microgrid that replenishes or substantiates the reason of not going down. So people are looking at those avenues. And I think the other avenue is, do we want to own our infrastructure, or do we want someone else to own it? And those were big takeaways for me, just in the few hours of presentations that we had. I'm pretty excited about that. We also continue our professional development in our leadership team. We've have completed 5 of 6 modules. There is an expectation that we look for some recommendations from Brew and Associates. Is how do we dive into any of these modules that we may feel need more time for our team to continue to learn and educate themselves. So we'll look at including more professional development in the next year, in addition to the 6 modules, and then also looking for a recommendation from the core teams to look at who didn't make the first pass through in those modules, and how do we get additional folks that are ready for that type of development in their professionalism. Biogas to RCNG conditioning system. California Energy Commission grant, ARB 17-036. We received our check in the mail for the conditioning segment, in an amount of $1,816,000. Thank you, Guy. Thank you for your team. Thank you for everybody that was involved. That should help our bottom line in this next month. So thank you. Joint feasibility, we did have our most recent joint ad hoc joint committee met on Friday, May 12th. And we were talking about the progress, and we're starting to see actual results of the study, which, like I said, I think over the next 4 to 5 months, we'll start seeing more of those characterizations come in and building pathways and business cases that we can further develop in the future. Want to thank the pub ed team and the education team and all the staff that came out to support with the Earth Day events. I know we had them here. Special appreciation for that. The pub ed team and the communications team attended the Capio conference in Monterey, California. It's the California Association of Public Information Officials, and where the team learned about exclusive communication on social media and effective public engagement strategies and opportunities. Thank you for everybody that participated in the Pacific Grove Good Old Days. We gave out over 200 kitchen pails. We had a lot of interest of what we're doing, so we can continue to expand what we're doing on education. And then thank you for everybody involved in the recent tours. We had the environmental students from UC Santa Cruz recently toured the MRF. They learned best practices. And we also had Save Our Shores junior stewards toward the compost facility with Keith Day's team and our educational team. So thank you for all the efforts around what we do on top of our regular normal business. That's all I have to say.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on to board communications. And go to board. I know you touched on the ad hoc committee meeting, but we did have an ad hoc committee meeting on that microgrid project with Scott Donaldson and Ron, and I don't know his last name right now. But yeah, Terry and I were there, and of course both general managers and all that, and we got a Gantt chart. We have an idea of how things are supposed to schedule to move forward. As we know, even the initial over the fence power line got more complicated and it's taking a little while, and so, like Felipe said about the sourcing of materials in for microgrid, there's some things that just take a year to get once we order them. It's incredible how long it takes. And we discussed future budget asks to fund it's moving along, and that the costs are being shared 50-50. It's proposed to be shared 50-50 between the two agencies for now.
That's correct. I think you're tagged 400,000 for each agency. 150,000 for each agency would be for the director of microgrids role that has been consultants for, because we lost Ken Lewis, the initial hire. And then we are tagged another 250,000 for each agency for further studies that come out from the initial feasibility study. So there'll have to be a second phase or the finalizing of any business cases that we want to pursue even further before we get to a building design stage. So we put a little bit of money there. We don't think it'll be everything that we need as we get the results, that we may come back with a further request for additional funding on items that pertain to feasibility results that we could turn into business cases and further develop in the future. So that's where we're at. As we talked about on the medium transmission voltage connection, really what changed in the design was the microgrid going highly level design that we desire to have. So initially, once it's completed or the project's completed, it will be the first microgrid between the two facilities that is up and running here at ReGen Monterey. So we're pretty excited. I think it was worth the wait, but again, we're waiting for an item called the switch gear, and that could be 12 months. So we are at the mercy of how fast we can get some equipment to the facility. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for coming. All right, other,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
I'm hoping the board might accommodate a brief comment here from the staff, from the peanut gallery here.
Absolutely.
It's a comment I should have made earlier during the art in residence program. I have to say, I was absolutely stunned by that artwork that Jesse showed, and I'm, you know, it was very impressive. And I know, you know, Karen had a great idea of, you know, maybe an art show in the different city halls or anything like that. But it occurred to me, there might be even a more effective way to get out the impression of that artwork and how impressive it would be the art from the, I want to say the art from the dump, the art from the sanitary landfill. It would be in the form of a paperback portfolio of his work that could be printed up and provided, you know, in a more widespread possibility. Something just for the district to think about, because it was I thought it was very impressive. It was very impressive artwork, and to send that message to folks that have no idea of what we do here, it would be, I think it'd be very impactful. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
That's a great idea. See, well, could that be something that the finance?
I'm saying, Eric and Zoe nod their heads.
Yeah.
We'd love to work on something like that.
Yeah.
Especially before it's all sold.
Yeah, make sure you got that good quality reproduction, so we can.
And maybe with a digital emphasis that might go wider than the print. emphasis.
And we've done some of that already through social media, and there is an artist in residence tab on our website that showcases all of the artists that have been featured over the years. So we've already got some of that out there. We did do some press outreach for this item. So we'll continue to think of other ways that we can support this program and make it more widespread. This was definitely a unique exhibit in that it featured us and it surprised us in that way.
Yes, I would be very interested if you did send it to us digitally, because we could put that on our agendas just for a little FYI, and that would be very impressive, I think. And we could share it at our city council meetings or.
But especially manufactured digital book would be more emphasis than the norm of putting it on our website. Right?
Yeah.
A lot could go into the art of a digital book, you know, arranging a digital book to have impact.
Yeah, that's also something we said though about having a hard copy and good quality.
Yeah.
You know, print stock and all that.
Not just that.
And staff did purchase, ReGen did purchase some of those items that featured. So we do have rights to some of those originals. They went like hotcakes, I gotta tell you. It was within a matter of minutes, the whole collection was sold. But we did purchase them.
Great. All right. Thank you. That's, yeah, great point. All right, Robert, if you could read us into closed session, and then I'll briefly see if there's any comment on the closed session item.
Right, this is closed session relative to the performance evaluation of the general manager. At this time, if there's any comments from the public about that matter before we go into the closed session. Otherwise, we go into closed session, come out from closed session, there'll be an announcement of any action that might be taken in the closed session. And that will be reported when Ida comes back on the starts the recording of after closed session.
Okay, great, thank you. Is there any comment on the closed session item?
No.
All right, seeing no one online, closing public comments.
The committee went into a closed session with regard to the agenda item as listed, having to do with the performance evaluation of the general manager. That matter was taken up and discussed at length by the committee. And at 12:45, the committee came back into open session and reported that they had concluded the closed session and that no reportable action was taken. And then the chair, there being no further business, adjourned the meeting.